for the delay in starting this meeting. We have been meeting here since 4:30 this afternoon and needed to transition from study meeting to our regular meeting. So thank you for bearing with us. At this time, I'd like to ask Ms. Banks to call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Land?
Here.
Mr. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. Bertiassi?
Here.
Ms. Seymour?
Here.
Mr. Moss?
Here.
Ms. Jordan? Here. Mr. Sider?
Here.
You have 7 members present.
Thank you. I'd also like to ask if you have a cell phone to turn it off or on vibrate. And at this time, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Once again, good evening. The first, we're scratching the first item on our agenda. Representative Hobbs was due here, but he's been called out of town. We'll move on to a proclamation presentation commemorating April 24th, 2013 as a Day of Remembrance for the Greater Detroit Armenian Community. And I believe, Ms. Mark, this is yours.
To the council and to those here, can I ask our city clerk to please join me? We have the Gold Temple, Gold Dome Church that so many people refer to, and that is just a stellar congregation and architect in our city that the Armenian community worship in. And many of you, if you know your history, that the Armenian community went through a genocide, and they have quite a history of survival, and that they do not want to be forgotten. So this Wednesday, on April 24th, we will have the Day of Remembrance in which will be held at St. John's Armenian Church. And it reads as follows. At the outbreak of World War I, the Armenian men, women, and children became the victims of hatred and fear for an empire seeking to resolve their Armenian question. Without warning, on Easter Sunday, April 24, 1915, over 200 Armenian religious leaders were arrested and eventually murdered. Whereas Armenians were forced to flee and found sanctuary here in the United States of America and found a new freedom to live in peace. They remember their loved ones who perished and for the past 98 years have honored the departed and advocated for justice and global recognition yet to be fully recognized. During the years of 1988 through 1991, Armenians suffered the oppressive forces which ousted and uprooted them without just cause of reason, inflicting death and destruction of property upon many thousands of Armenians. Therefore be it resolved that I, as the mayor of the city of Southfield, the county of Oakland, do hereby recognize April 24th, 2013 as the Day of Remembrance, Day of Double Remembrance in the city of Southfield. And be it further resolved that the citizens of Southfield remember 2 genocides, one in Ottoman Turkey and one in Azerbaijan, and offer prayers of support and remembrance for all the souls who perished in both of these tragedies. And many of you know the proud Armenian that we have that's elected in our office, and she has been really a stellar leader in this community, ensuring that the Armenian community and the contributions and their rich history is preserved. And so I present this to our city clerk, Nancy Banks, and ask that you present it to
this is a special weekend in Southfield, and I'm going to call on the director of the Southfield Chamber of Commerce to tell us a little bit about Southfield Restaurant Week. We're, the City Council and the Mayor are very pleased to have you here tonight to present Southfield Restaurant Week, and we urge everybody to go out and eat in one of our local restaurants and support our local businesses. So with that, I turn this over to Tanya Martha-Spano.
Thank you, Council, for allowing me to come here and tell you a little bit about Restaurant Week. We did launch that this week. It was put together with the idea to get patrons into restaurants after 5 during the week, the 22nd to the 27th. So there's 8 participating restaurants. Those restaurants will have a price-fixed menu, 3-course meal. The only thing that's required is that you make a reservation. You can visit our website, thesouthfieldchamber.com/restaurant week. You can see the 8 participating restaurants, which consist of Baco Ristorante, Tango's, which is in the Weston, McVee's Bar and Grill, Skyline Club, Beans and Cornbread, Pizzeria Viga, Gastronomy, and the Franklin Street Grill, which is in Embassy Suites. So those 8 restaurants are participating in Restaurant Week, and the cost ranges from $15 to $35, and again, it includes a 3-course meal. So I encourage everybody to take a look at our website. You can pull down the menu and actually see what your options will be with the contact information, and you can call and make your reservations there. I did bring some flyers for council to take a look at if you want to. I encourage you to visit them.
Thank you. You can give the information to our clerk, and I know that, Mr. Fraser, this means that you won't be eating hamburger at McDee's on Wednesday. You can have a 3-course meal this week.
Thank you.
Mr. Moss?
Yeah, I just want to add, I'm really excited for this event. I've already made my reservations for Tuesday, Wednesday, and thinking about where I'm going on Saturday. And just for the community in general, this does 2 positive things for the city. Number one, it puts money into commerce here in Southfield. It supports our local businesses. It supports people who've done hard work in creating a restaurant, creating their vision for it, and rewarding them with diners and patrons. But the second thing it does, I think it fosters a sense of community here in Southfield. Going out and talking to your neighbors, where are you going to go, this week for Restaurant Week. So I'm hoping for a very good and positive, successful week. And I'd like to see this not only done next year, but throughout the year. This could be a twice-a-year event, and you could just add and add and add to the different restaurants we have here in Southfield that can participate with it. So this is, I give kudos to you and to the Chamber for creating this idea, promoting it, and now it's come to fruition this week.
Thank you.
Mayor Lawrence?
Yes, we often I hear people say, we don't have any restaurants in Southfield. Well, we do, and we have some amazing restaurants. They may not be the national chain name that you recognize. And one of the things that I know, if a restaurant is successful, it will stay in your community. So in addition to what Councilman Moss said, it's an opportunity for you to go when they're prepared and ready for you and excited about you coming, and to find out the restaurants that you have here in your community. If we really want to grow our restaurant base, then in the evening you need to eat at restaurants in our city, because once the existing restaurants are doing well, then it will grow into others. So I do encourage you, take this week and visit these restaurants that are listed and find out that we do have places to eat here. And there are excellent restaurants. Beans and Cornbread, is known throughout this area. Baco's is known throughout this area. McVee's is a legend. If I say McVee's, people all around say, oh yeah, it's a gathering place. And then in our hotels, many of you, because people eat in the hotels when they're visiting, you don't go to the hotels to sample their restaurants. So I do encourage you to go. This is a fun thing. This is something that we can be excited about. So let's celebrate it and go out and eat. And I will say to couples, every now and then you just need to go out and relax and eat and enjoy yourself. And if you don't like that person, find somebody else. And enjoy yourself. So please take advantage of Southfield Restaurant. Thank you.
I have to make our newest restaurant is Gastronomy. It's a little bit hidden, so you might want to find it. It's in the Oakland Town Square building where the former Morton's was. And they are participating new restaurant, and we're very pleased that they stepped right up into this event as well. Anyone else? Seeing none, then we're moving on to a really joyous resolution next. And this is the second year in a row this is becoming maybe a tradition. But I would like to call the mayor up. We have a proclamation and presentation for the Southfield Christian High School boys basketball team as Class D state champions.
If I may take the executive privilege, may I have Councilman Fatani please come join us? He is quite the ambassador for Southfield Christian. So, ladies and gentlemen, I had the wonderful pleasure of going to the banner raising at Southfield Christian when they raised their second banner. And I think they are the only private Christian school to have back-to-back championships. Am I right? And that is quite a phenomenal achievement. So I'm going to ask the team and the coaches to please come forward. Orderly. Don't be afraid.
Joe.
So this is the joint resolution between the council and the mayor, and it is for Southfield Christian boys basketball team 2012-13 season Class D back-to-back state champion. Southfield Christian School, a ministry of Highland Park Baptist Church in Southfield, is a college prep PK through kindergarten through 12th grade educational community committed to pursuing excellence for the glory of God. And Southfield Christian first opened in 1979 and has since grown to more than 500 students currently enrolled in the grades kindergarten through 12th grade, representing approximately 40 cities and 100 different churches from the Tri-County area of metropolitan Detroit. The Southfield Christian boys basketball team won its second Class D state championship at the Breslin Center in East Lansing on March 23, 2013, defeating Wyoming Tri-Unity Christian 65-46. That was the third one. The Eagles shot 52% from the floor overall, 22 of 42, and limited Tri-County Christian to a 34% shooting, 19 of 53. When you get old, you need glasses. You guys understand. And had a 32-27 rebounding edge and saw 4 players score in the double digits. Whereas the Eagles finished the season with an overall 23-4 record by winning their final 20 games after starting the season with one of the toughest non-league schedules in the state, cementing themselves as the basketball powerhouse by going 48-6 over the past 2 seasons, in addition to winning 2 consecutive state champions. Be it resolved that we, the Mayor and the Council of the City of Southfield, County of Oakland, State of Michigan, do hereby recognize and congratulate Southfield Christian Boys Basketball Team, and be it further resolved that we, the City and the Council, convey our collective congratulations to the Southfield Christian Boys Basketball Team, your coaches, your administrators, on successfully defending, not only winning, but defending your 2012 title while achieving yet another state championship. So, I'm going to turn it over to our Council President.
Just very briefly, we're very proud to have this stellar team with us tonight. We hope that this becomes an annual event that we'll see you all next year, right?
Right.
Okay. We'll do this again. You're bringing glory to Southfield, and we appreciate that. To the coaches and team members, great going. To the mayor and to the council, thank you for recognizing us. We appreciate it, and we're proud of our guys. We're proud of our school, and we hope that they learn diligence and character from what we do in sports. And we hope that in 10 years they're godly men and husbands and have their degrees and are successful citizens. And so that's our goal. And again, thank you for recognizing us in our school.
If I can ask the team to come stand right there so we can get a group shot with the council. So go all the way back.
And while they're getting in line, my children attended Southfield Christian, so we're very proud of that.
We can't see him.
Thank you.
I'll name the players on the team. Ben Cookingham, Aldridge Williams, Rob Parks, Lindsey Hunter, Leonard Crosby, Jack Bowles, Bobby Banks, Blake Washington, Coach John White, Cameron Garner, Coach Hart, Austin, Marlo Brown, DeMarco White, Richard Fagan, and Bakari Evelyn. We're always extremely proud of our young people, and tonight is no exception. Moving on. Next on our agenda, we have appointments, and I'll call on Council Pro Tem, Ms. Jordan, to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our committee, the Boards and Commissions Committee, which consists of myself, Councilman Lance, Councilman Moss, we interviewed several individuals that applied for and were going to be reappointed to the various commissions. And we recommend the appointment to the Commission on Senior Adults of Kelly Staff, the reappointment to the Commission on Senior Adults of Yolanda Smith, the appointment to the Veterans Commission of Harold Huggins, and the reappointment to the Veterans
reappointment to the Commission on Senior Adults of Yolanda R. Smith, appointment to the Veterans Commission of Harold Huggins, and reappointment to the Veterans Commission of Larry McLemore and Gregory Polio. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Banks, if you'll do the swearing in. And then, ladies and gentlemen, once you've taken the oath and signed the book, we'd like you to come up behind Mayor Lawrence, and we'd like to shake your hand.
Please raise your right hand, please. Do you hereby swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of this state, and the Southfield City Charter, and you will faithfully perform the duties to the commission to which you are appointed or reappointed to in and for the city of Southfield, County of Oakland, State of Michigan, according to the best of your ability?
So, very quickly, I want to introduce the items that are on the consent agenda. Item A is a request to approve the earmarking of $89,980 from the Local Improvement Revolving Fund for landscape and restoration improvements to the 5,000 Town Center property. This is necessary to obtain the right-of-way required for the reconstruction of Evergreen Road, which will take place in 2014. That is good news. This matter was reviewed earlier today at the Committee of the Whole meeting. Item B is the authorization for the mayor and city clerk to sign an agreement with radio station WJZZ to present a smooth jazz festival August 9th and 10th this summer on the front lawn. All city costs, including security, traffic control, parks and rec assistance, will be reimbursed by WJZZ. Plans for this event were reviewed in detail first by the Parks and Rec Board and then earlier today by the Mayor and Council. Item C is an economic development initiative where the city will partner with BASF to accomplish an essential improvement to an existing bridge, providing entrance to BASF's corporate facility on 11 Mile Road. They also have an entrance on Telegraph. The city and BASF will jointly apply for a grant in the amount of $185,823 from the Michigan Department of Transportation's Economic Development Fund to be matched by $51,000 or 21% of the total cost from the city's 2013-14 major street budget. This improvement project will not exactly replace the bridge, but it will do major rebuilding of this bridge. The next item is D. This is a bid award to Allied Construction of Clarkston, Michigan, in a not-to-exceed amount of $550,000 for asphalt maintenance and spot repair. This is an annual expenditure of the council. We're pleased to report that this is money that will be spent on potholes, and also the unit price is 16% lower than our bid last year. And it's due to a highly competitive construction market. This award is for the construction season beginning June 1st and going through December 31st. So we're also approving contract provisions for two one-year contract extensions at the unit prices submitted. So we're hoping to save some more dollars through this action. And these funds are provided through the Streets and Highways budget for the current year as well as 2013-14. Item E is an award to bid JB Contractors of Detroit in a not-to-exceed amount of $725,000 for concrete maintenance and spot repair. This is very similar to the item I just read. This is for not total road construction, but for replacement of cement roadways or curbs where needed. And it's for the same period, June 1st through December 31st, and the funds will come out of this year's and next year's highway budget. Again, it's $725,000, and this also we saw a price reduction of 19.7% from the previous year. Item F is a resolution for acceptance of public improvements such as water and sewer system upgrades that arise from private development of businesses, business enterprises, or educational institutions. We do this usually annually or biannually to accept the infrastructure improvements paid for by others. Item G is a cooperative effort of the Mayor and City Council, City staff, Downtown Development Authority, and the Southfield business community, the Chamber of Commerce, and major stakeholders in the corner of Downtown Development District, such as St. John's Hospital, Northland Center, and as well as the Oakland County Road Commission. And we are very pleased to announce the impending reconstruction of Greenfield Road on the southbound lanes between Mount Vernon and 8 Mile Road. This reconstruction will provide a new concrete roadway at a total estimated cost of $3.6 million, or 72% will come from highly sought-after federal, county, and road commission funding. The remaining 28%, roughly $1 million, will be the city's match, which is also includes $100,000 from the Downtown Development Authority. We are very pleased to announce this as that road has become a washboard. And we are grateful to all of the parties that put pressure on the Oakland County Road Commission, as Greenfield Road is not a city road. It is a county road. And through the efforts of OCC, Northland, the DDA, Providence Hospital, and others, we were able to secure this funding for 2014. Item H was previously reviewed several weeks ago by Council. This is a budget adjustment in the 2012-13 budget, and it deals with drug law enforcement funds. In other words, these are grant funds that come back to the city in the amount of $91,052. And this will be used by the police department for various projects, including the replacement of one of the police dogs, specialized forensic equipment for solving computer theft or computer crimes, and for upgraded recording and camera equipment in our for our detective bureau. Item I, this item is an annual reimbursement with the Oakland County Road Commission for street sweeping. The city of Southfield will sweep 12-mile Washer, Greenfield, and 10-mile roads for $6,500 reimbursement from the Road Commission. And again, it's an annual agreement that we have with the Road Commission. And finally, item J is the authorization to apply for a grant in the amount of $188,000 through the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments to facilitate a sidewalk improvement program in the neighborhood of Southfield Village Estates. A subsequent council action would be required to accept any grant funding, and this is only tonight. We're getting authorization to approve applying for a grant. It doesn't mean that we will get it, and it doesn't mean that the sidewalks will be replaced or installed. And I do have one other final item, and this is a technical correction to an action that Council approved several weeks ago, I believe on March 18th. We partnered with Telnet to occupy a building that has been vacant for 10 years, and the application went to the state, and really it should not have said Telnet, it should have said Cybernetics, as that is the subsidiary of Telnet. This was not an error on the part of the City Council. It was actually on the petitioner for this agreement, and we're just going back to make the technical correction.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I move for the approval of consent agenda items A through K.
Support. It's been moved by Mr. Moss and supported by Mr. Frazier. Before we take a vote, was there anyone that wanted something withheld?
I'd like to have a meeting that we can get right down to the nitty-gritty on what the design is going to look like and how much it's going to cost and what the grant is, and just really cement that project down so that everybody's aware of what's going on. I'd also like to have the engineer of Evergreen Road with the roundabouts at some time in the future talk about how semis that traverse down Evergreen Road will be able to go through the two roundabouts when they're close. And the reason I say that, I ran into a truck driver who made the shopping center on 23 Whitmore Lake Road, and he said that they draw straws to see who's going to pay the shopping center because they can't make those turnabouts. And I'd just like to hear from the engineers. On the other item, I guess I just love to look at roads and their deterioration and how they get that way. And I'd like to see, Mr. Administrator, if we could get Dr. Grace at LTU, the Oakland County engineers, and the state to fund something which would get down to how to build a street, concrete street. They saw those at intervals, and they become railroad tracks. And if you look at 275 even on that new highway, the car goes bump, 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 bump already. And what happens is it gets that break where they make that saw cut, and then they start putting down coal pack when it explodes, and then we get it more of a jump, so you can't even put a cup of coffee in your car without jumping all over the place. But there's got to be some way that they stop sawing those roads in the manner in which they're doing it. Because if you look down the center lines of concrete roads, when they make the cut, that's where the coal pack is eventually put in. That's where you have your seam, and that's where the cement comes up. And also when they do that saw cut at intervals, and boy, I'll tell you, the perfect place is Greenfield Road, because every saw cut is what you're really seeing disturbed, and why it's such a ruddy road. So maybe it would give a good project to LTU and the state, and maybe the contractors and cement men, to find out why at these saw cuts roads will not hold up.
Through the chair to Councilman Percasse, it never hurts to ask. We'll put the question to the experts and suggest that there be a dialogue on these issues. It is extremely frustrating.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next, we're going to move on to public hearings. And our first one is the special lot assessment. And on this public hearing, only the people who are involved in the special lot assessment may speak at this public hearing. This is strictly a hearing for those who are parties that are being assessed. This is not like our usual public hearings that are open to anyone. So with that, I will introduce our city
shall prepare an assessment roll covering all such costs, and the council shall schedule a hearing for the confirmation of the assessment roll. Such assessments, interest, and charges thereon shall, from the date of confirmation of the roll, be and remain a lien on the property assessed. The provisions in the city ordinance allow for the full reimbursement of all expenses incurred by the city for labor, materials, and service with regard to any single premise upon or in respect to which the expense was incurred, and is subject to the single lot special assessment. The full reimbursement spread is $213,184.63. I am here as basically a coordinator of 4 different departments: the code enforcement, public works, building department, and the police department. And we have representatives at the rear of the city council chambers who are ready to listen to individuals speak about their particular situation.
Okay, before I declare the public hearing open, on an occasion, there has been a mistake made, or people have certainly have the right to appeal the assessment. So I will reiterate what Mr. Tijarina just said, that we do have people, city staff, who will be happy to meet with anyone if they think that the assessment is either inaccurate, unfair, or whatever their issue is. Secondly, I want to reiterate, this public hearing is only for people who are on the special assessment roll. In other words, they must be a party of interest directly related to the special assessment. So with that, I will declare the public hearing on the single lot special assessment roll open. Is there anyone who wishes to speak about their special assessment?
I kind of would like to challenge your assertion. It's the ordinance itself, and it was reaffirmed less than 2 years ago, that it says interested parties.
It's interested parties. And Mr. Mullen, you have plenty of opportunity to address this council. We never not listen to you. But in this particular hearing, per our city attorney, is only for people on the special assessment roll.
I have no problems.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to address this hearing on a special assessment? Seeing none, once again,
I have a question to ask on the
you
record.
can ask it under when you're on the agenda.
The parliamentarian procedure, is
You
it
are
allowed?
out of order, Ms. Gerald. I'm going to ask you to sit down.
Gerald, G-E-R-A-L-D.
I know your name. I'm going to ask you to sit down.
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
You may ask it when you have your 5 minutes later in the meeting.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the single lot special assessment roll for
Sure.
2013.
It's been moved by Mr. Gordon, seconded by Mr. Frazier, to approve the single lot special assessment roll. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Tijarina and staff, for standing by.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I do want to state that there is a procedure and requirements that must be followed legally to prepare the assessment roll, and that residents have been notified, and if there are any issues, to feel free to call the city, but it has been approved and notification is placed for anyone to come tonight to have their opportunity to address it. So I think this is not random. This is a procedure that we've been doing for a number of years, and there are strict compliance rules that we have followed as a city.
Thank you for that further explanation. And if you're not here tonight and you still have a question, we would urge you to contact the city administrator administration with your question on the special assessment. All right, next we're going to move on to GP 1249, GP 1294. This is a special use and site plan request by Alan Trust Monument Engineering Group to convert a single-family house into a religious institution in the RE single-family residential district. This item was before council on March 18th. At that time, we had the public hearing. So although it's listed as a public hearing, the public hearing is held. For those who weren't here or may not remember, council postponed the action on this after the public hearing, postponed to a date certain, April 22nd, to have further discussion on this and a vote. So at this point, I believe I'm turning over to Mr. Crowe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just do a brief overview that the Planning Department received the special use and site plan request on November 19, 2012. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on February 27, 2013, and made a favorable recommendation. The Site Plan Committee met on March 13th and was satisfied with the plan and agreed this item could move to the March 18th meeting. And as you stated, a public hearing was held on March 18th. Action was postponed to a date certain for tonight. If I could, I'd like to replay the video just so the council has that fresh in their mind, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions.
SB 1294 is a special use and site plan review request of Alan Trust of Monument Engineering Group Associates Incorporated to convert a single-family home to a religious institution. The property is located at 21491 Beach Road on the southwest corner of Beach Road and Ridgewood Drive, Lot 39 of the Ridgewood Knoll subdivision, Sidwell parcel 24314260007 in Section 31 of the city. The subject property, as well as the properties to the north across Ridgewood Drive, the west, south, and east across Beach Road are zoned RE single-family residential. With regard to the existing land uses, the subject properties, as well as the properties to the north across Ridgewood Drive and to the west, are developed with single-family homes fronting Ridgewood Drive. The properties to the south are developed with a single-family home and vacant lots fronting Rouge Court. The properties to the east across Beach Road are developed with a single-family home fronting Beach Road and part of the Beechwood Golf Course. The proposed site contains 2.37 acres of land with 751.94 feet of frontage along Beach Road and a depth ranging from 140 to 260 feet. The special use request is to permit a religious institution within the RE single-family residential zoning district. The submitted site plan reflects the conversion of a single-family home to a religious institution. The parking required for the development is 19 spaces with 22 provided on site. The landscape provided conforms to ordinance requirements. The elevations reflect a mix of brick and glass. Issues considered by the Planning Department during the review of the special use and site plan were the standards and conditions of the special use requirements of the RE single-family residential zoning district for religious institutions. The petitioner is to implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security. The proposal is in accordance with the Southfield Comprehensive Master Plan, noting low-density single-family for this parcel. The appellant must obtain a Zoning Board of Appeals waiver for the required wall on all sides of the development adjacent to residential zoning.
After careful deliberation by the Planning Commission, they recommended favorable approval subject to the items that are outlined in the city planner's recommendation to council for April 22nd, 2013. These include a waiver of the unpierced masonry wall on all sides of the property adjacent to residential districts. Due to the passive nature of the site, the ravine, the existing woods, it was felt that a 6-foot-tall arborvitae hedge would be more appropriate than installing a wall. There's some landscaping issues. Petitioner is also moving an existing wood fence that is located in the right-of-way onto their property to screen the proposed parking lot. There are no physical changes to the building themselves. It is to accommodate required number of parking spaces on site. And the petitioner is also installing a 6-foot-wide asphalt path consistent with city standards along the right-of-way and beach road. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. In particular, I do know representatives of the petitioner are here available for questions as well.
I'd ask the petitioners to come forward, and why don't you reintroduce yourselves this evening?
Good evening. My name is Alan Gross. You know my address again?
Yes, business address for the record.
638 South Grand Avenue, Fowlerville, 48836. I represent Monument Engineering and the owners of the property.
Gentlemen, anything else to add at this time? Otherwise, I'm going to open it up for council questions.
We had a pretty good discussion last month.
Okay. All right. Mr. Moss?
Yeah, just want to clarify or expand upon the position that I took last month, and the city planner can correct me if I'm wrong in any of this. My analysis, my going over the material, it seems that we aren't changing much, if not anything, except for the fact that we are alleviating a traffic problem within the interior of the neighborhood and on Beach Woods by helping to facilitate and add better parking on site to this establishment. And I can understand the concerns of some that, this would disrupt the feeling and flow of the neighborhood, but from my experience in knowing where the property is, walking through that area and actually driving through it, I'm at a point where I'm comfortable that this is up along Beach Road. It's kind of a major not a major thoroughfare, but it's not the interior of the neighborhood, that I think that we can still preserve the feeling and neighborliness of the area by alleviating a traffic problem. If anything, I think the petitioner's plans would help keep order and help preserve the feeling of serenity and calm in the neighborhood by creating a better parking situation. So I'm going to be in support of this project.
Okay. Next we have Mr. Cotton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the page 4 of the drawing that I have, I'm very concerned, Mr. Crone, on the parking lot, and that it drains indirectly, I'll say, into the Rouge. And I've seen that on this plan, and why I looked upon that thing so intently is that the development at Northwestern and Telegraph Road on the southeast corner, or I should say the southeast corner, the real estate building. In the back, if you go into the back there, they have the asphalt all slanting with curves, and it all goes to this one location, and then they have stone going down the hill, and the stone is all over the place. It really has no effect on stopping anything from going in the roof. I don't know what design that is, how the engineers prevent oil spill or gas spill from going into the Rouge at that particular spot. That's where we have our fish derby, by the way. But now I see the same thing here. I just have a strong feeling that we should not in any way have parking lots drain into the Rouge. Now, Rouge is a very special place. nice, you know, they spend a lot of years here in Southfield. They started to clean water and everything else in the Rouge. And maybe you can explain how the filtration might clean and be stable for time to come by draining into the Rouge in that fashion.
Through the chair, I'll give a layman's interpretation, and I'll turn over to the engineer. They're sheet draining through a forebay that's going to hold the water and clean or filter the water before it actually gets into the Rouge system. So it's a collection period that seeps out the sediments and contaminants, and then based on the agricultural rate, it's released through stone riprap that further cleans the water before it enters into the drain system. Again, our city engineer and others will be reviewing the actual construction and detailing of that. That's an oversimplification. I'm going to turn it to the engineer to actually explain the mechanics and the engineering behind it. Hopefully I did some justification.
No, absolutely, that's a very good explanation. It'll sheet flow, as Mr. Crude said, to a swale, and we'll get some infiltration in the swale as well, and some filterization. There is a sedimentation basin which is going to be designed in the city and the Oakland County Drain Commissioner standards to allow any sedimentation that's going to wash off the parking lot to settle out. There will be regular maintenance of this basin to remove that sediment before it can reach into the Rouge River. We do have the riprap, which is a erosion control measure that dissipates the energy as it flows down the embankment. There's a pretty steep embankment there prior to it getting into the, it's not directly to the Rouge, as you mentioned, but it is indirectly will filter into the Rouge.
And how is it maintained over the period of years after the stone freezes up, the water freezes and moves the stones away, and then all of a sudden there's stones down the hill and it's just raw earth. And that's what's appearing in the building, in the back of the building that I just named. And I think if anybody looks at that, so I don't know how this differs. I guess I'd have to leave it up to the engineer, but I guess you know, we have a forest parking lot in the back here that goes into a swale. It goes into nothing is taken off the parking lot.
Right.
I just wonder why you don't go to that type of a parking lot, since it's so important that nothing deters or brings down the other chemicals into the Rouge.
Well, I guess to answer two of your questions, typically there's a maintenance agreement that's required, and that'll take care of the future maintenance of the sedimentation basin and the riprap ever proposed. So if it starts to fail, the property owner will be required to address that, as well as cleaning out the sediment that accumulates over time in the sedimentation basin.
That sounds good, but realistically, nobody follows up on these things, and it slowly deteriorates, and I don't know how we hold the developer to the fire on that. The only way I know is not to allow it. You know, I mean, I know that it's rough way, but I've seen this in the back of the building that was granted in Southfield, and I'm very amazed to see that all the blacktop doesn't even wash off. You got a curve, and you go right in the curve and funnels right onto the bricks and then down into the Rouge. And that was approved by somebody, and I would never approve it. If I hadn't seen it, I'd never approve that. I mean, I just want to say that I protect the Rouge at any chance I get. I mean, that's a really special tributary
Through the chair to Mr. Fracassi and the council, you could make a condition on the city engineer working on reviewing permeable material for the parking lot. We do routinely require maintenance agreements, but in some cases we also require performance bond, guarantee, or letter of credit, whatever's suitable to the city attorney, an amount to be determined by the city engineer for the cleaning and maintenance of this bioswale area, and that's a reasonable condition that the council could put on here.
Mr. Chair, anything that would be assisting in protecting the rouge would be something I'd be in favor of. Although I throw up a red flag that I just would not like to see any more of these kinds of parking lots that drain directly into the rouge. And this, according to the topography here, you've got the south, I think it is south end, is almost on the hill. That's going to have to be filled, isn't it, to get it level?
We're not proposing any filling.
Sorry?
We're not proposing any filling of the south.
But according to the topography here, you got that one corner that's. Help me out, Terry. You see the corner to the right?
On the northwest corner of the parking lot, it does look like the landscape area encroaches on a couple contour swales.
Okay, for Kathy, you mentioned the south side of the property, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, on the north side, there's a little bit of grading that is going on to accommodate the parking lot, yes. And again, this is, I guess, typical of how any parking lot would drain, even to a storm sewer or to a river that is nearby. It would go to a sedimentation basin.
Is that going to have to be built up to drain? Is that south, drain north?
It's draining to the west.
It's draining to the west?
Yes.
So it's this way.
South and west, I believe, is the slope.
It'll drain primarily to the west and then into the swale, and then it'll drain south into the sedimentation.
But the Rougewood Drive, Mr. Fracassi, is on the north side of the property. These would require final engineering approval with the construction documents.
Yes, so the city engineer would also have to review and approve any plans that we present after this meeting.
What is the, I would say, oval that is between the parking lot and the rocks that go under?
That's the sedimentation basin.
Is there certain kinds of grass in that or growth?
It'll be seeded with similar grass that's on the site now, but it'll be a low area that'll retain a certain amount of water for a certain period of time before it discharges. And what that does is it allows water to. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, I was talking about filters.
Yes. Well, filters, but it sediments. It allows any particulates in the water to settle down to the bottom of the basin, and then it'll flow over the top of the basin.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Seymour.
Thank you. I have some concerns, share some of the concerns Mr. Picasso has expressed, but I go a step further. Normally, when we have a drainage area that has contaminants in it, and if it's large enough, we create a wetland for it to go through, an artificial wetland, as a cleansing location. The bioswale doesn't sound to me as though it would do enough, because if it's not maintained all the time, I think there's a problem. That's a major concern. We're doing everything to clean up the rouge, to provide make people hook up to their sewer system to avoid the pollution of the rouge. We've done so much in the past 20 years at least. And to me, this doesn't answer my concern. I really would like to see this postponed until we can have something. I'm not satisfied that this is going to do the job because it has to be maintained, as you just said. And if it isn't maintained, we're going to have some problems with it. And it's too iffy to me and too
not directly to you, but just to why I will not be supporting this request, because you're asking to convert a single-family home in a residential neighborhood to a religious institution. And I remember a city council years ago denied a church that wanted to come to 8 Mountain Beach, and we looked at, actually I voted in favor of it, but it was denied because many people said that it was too much traffic in that area. And so here you're asking us to approve a single-family home and convert it to a religious institution with parking and all of the traffic that goes with having a church. And I cannot support a church in a single-family neighborhood such as this that was on another major thoroughfare where other businesses around, where the residents aren't as close to the church. I just cannot in good conscience support this. I don't think it's good for the city, because the other component is, and I'm looking at one of the reports, is that you're going to have to get a sign. Now you're going to put a sign up on each in a residential neighborhood to highlight what you're doing.
Right, and then any sign will have to be approved by another body, I know.
Right, but you're asking again to put a sign in a residential neighborhood. You've had as many as 75 people attending special events. I mean, it's traffic. And it's all in a residential neighborhood. So I just cannot support this.
The larger events are held off-site.
Yeah, I just cannot support approving a church, single-family home into a residential, into a religious institution.
Next is Mr. Fraser.
Yeah. To Mr. Crowe, the swale that we're discussing, that's being discussed, how is this different than the swale that is required in any business or any development that comes before the planning commission?
Well, again, I'm not an engineer, but there's two ways of dealing with the water.
Yeah.
In any case, they cannot drain water more than the agricultural rate, so under its natural conditions. One way is to pipe it through a gutter system directly into our storm sewer system, and that requires a lot of engineering, a lot of infrastructure. The second way is through these more environmentally sensitive mitigation, where the volume of water is calculated based on standards that the engineer approves. There's an area, cubic area of storage that handles the rainfall. That water then is held in a forebay or detention area, and then it's slowly released. The advantage of that is it's less harsh on our infrastructure system. It does capture some of the sediments and pollutants before then that water is released in a bioswale to an appropriate drainage system. Again, the engineer gets the final sign-off, but this is a more naturally sensitive way of draining the water than to put it in a culvert, put it in a drainage storm sewer system, and then put it into our pumping system.
Okay, I appreciate the description that you just said. The question that I was asking is this different than the past 50 of them that we've approved without any challenge? It sounds the same way.
It's consistent with other reviews.
Yeah.
In some cases...
All of a sudden now it becomes a challenge. But before, when they come and says that the water needs to drain into a swale, hold the water, and then it dissipates at an agricultural rate, it's gone through without any challenge. Now all of a sudden it becomes a challenge, and I don't understand. So tell me, what is different about this swale than the last half dozen that have come through?
Not anything substantial that I'm aware of. I mean, the planning department, the engineering department, our stormwater manager, our landscape architect are promoting low-impact design. We want more of this than less of this.
Yeah.
And they're complying, and they'll have to comply. Ms. Seymour brought up some good points. We could always add some additional native indigenous wetland plants to help filter. That's a minor change with landscaping, and that could be made as a condition of final approval.
And So,
Flood mitigation is...
for the wetland itself.
Right.
So, I'm puzzled.
If I could just point out, this Buddhist Vihara has been operating since 2003.
Yes.
I think the applicant is making good faith effort to comply with city standards. They have been parking off-site up at Beechwood. They are parking bumper to bumper in their circle drive, and they're not making any physical changes. They're just trying to comply with our standards. Many religious institutions are permitted in residential district. However, it does require the special use standards being applied, which also requires public hearing, and that's why it's here in front of you.
Now, I live closer to this than any other member of the council. I live around the corner from it. I go by there all the time. And regardless of the day that I go by there, I don't see a preponderance of cars in the yard. The gate is open. You can see in the yard. I don't see a lot of cars in there. It's always quiet. I've never seen anyone have any kind of an event outside of the building. So it doesn't appear to be anything other than residents that may have some visitors there for their other cars. But there's never loud noises or anything. So I am in support of this, especially since the swale is designed similar to the other swales that has not caused us any heartburn, and we've approved it. Thank you.
Ms. Seymour, then Mr. Lamb.
Thank you. To Mr. Frazier's comment about, and Mr. Crow's comment, this is not wetland mitigation. This is not 2 acres required. This is the type of whatever the size of the swale is, needs to be designed like a wetland, so the right plants are in there and it's large enough to filter the water. And you don't clean out a wetland when the wetland is designed to clean the water before it goes into the Rouge. And we have systems like that. In fact, it's in our ordinance, where you can have a pond, and I forget what we call them, but a different type of catch basin, and then in order to clean that water that's draining from roads and so forth, wetland is created to filter the water. It's not anything about wetland mitigation. It's a totally different thing. But I am concerned because the whole reason for doing this and adding the parking is for this organization to grow. And I don't feel comfortable that we have any guarantees that it isn't going to become large enough, or in some respects, I don't want to say noisy enough, but I don't have the confidence that it's not going to grow to cause some disturbance in the neighborhood. And I'm particularly concerned about the water from the Rouge, or going into the Rouge. I wish that our stormwater manager was here to comment on that. I think she should have been here. I'm not comfortable with this, and I'm not inclined to support it, even though I'm supporting them being here. I feel like there are too many unanswered questions that I'm not comfortable with. I don't want to see it grow to the point that it's going to be a problem for, we're not putting really any limitations on how large it could be. Parking lot can hold so many cars, but they can park over at Beechwoods. So there's no limit as to how large these meetings could become, whether they could become disturbing to the community. I don't feel any assurances of that.
Through the chair, just to Ms. Seymour's comment, again, the building department sets the maximum occupancy, which is about 56 persons.
For a service?
Total for...
Not permanent occupancy.
Occupancy at any one time, a maximum of 56. That's how we calculated the need for 19 parking spaces. So again, there is some standards there that says that they can accommodate no more than so many people based on occupancy load. Just as a point of reference to your comment.
Okay.
All right. Next, Mr. Lance, and then Mr. Perkowski.
I understand the planning commission approved it. Is that right?
They recommended favorable.
Oh, they recommended favorable. Well, in respect to what the experts on the
planning commission say, I would approve it too. From everything that I heard, I think it will be a very good enterprise.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lance. Mr. Perkowski?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I can't really rebut what Councilman Frazier said, because I really am not an engineer. I just go from what I have seen, and it's the only one that I have seen. Is I went behind that building, which I thought was gorgeous, and they did an unbelievable landscaping job on that building. Here, help me out. What's the name of that building? It's real estate, is it? The big.
It's a white building right on the corner, just as you turn to go on 696 or.
The IIC building built a showroom that has a swale retention area. I don't know if you're referring to. I'm not sure which.
Well, it's on it'd be on the southeast corner of, when you go north, you go on I-696 downtown, you come right in front of it and you go to the side of it.
Yeah. It's just north of Edwards Photography, has the parking under the building, and they just they must have put 50 bushes in there, pine, about a year ago.
Yeah, I don't recall that.
But anyways,
I apologize. Coming up to.
I was back there just admiring the landscaping, and that's when I happened to run across this treatment that I'm referring to, and I was just surprised by crazy that we even allowed that one. And so when I seen this on this drawing, I have no objection other than the fact that from what I've seen how the other one is after engineers have designed it, I mean, you have a gas tank leak that's funneled right onto the rocks into the roof, what I'm describing. And I just really can't see that much of a difference if you have a storm here, that this one have overflow into the roof. And I'm sorry if I am not smart.
We'll definitely follow up with that.
Enough that, I mean, I just think we have a lot of wildlife down there, and I'm not a tree hugger, so to call it. I mean, I can try to stay reasonable, but I've seen this, and I asked any councilman to go back to that building and look at that same thing where it's rocks and it's all funneled. It goes down the rocks into the roof. And I didn't catch it when we did that one, but like I say, it was by accident in back of the building. But anyway, that's...
All right. Mr. Moss has to be recognized.
Yeah, I'll move for the approval of GP 1249, SP 1294, with the two conditions that we've discussed. One was the continual maintenance and ensuring that the runoff is appropriately filtered, and then the addition of landscape and planting. What was that, Mr. Planner?
Some natural landscape material to help clean the water.
Been moved by Mr. Moss. Your support.
Support.
I'm sorry, supported by Mr. Frazier. Any other discussion? Ms. Jordan.
What assurances do we have that each of the planner's recommendations will be fulfilled in the construction of this?
Yeah, through the chair, before the building department issues the certificate of occupancy, all of the departments go out to investigate that they have complied with the site plan conditions, and they cannot get their certificate of occupancy until they've all been complied with. We also have a perpetual maintenance agreement that gets recorded as part of the site plan approval, and in some cases, a performance bond, letter of credit, or other means is taken in to ensure enforcement. And at any one time, if there's violations, we have procedures through the codes department and legal to follow up with those violations. And since this is a special use, the city council will be involved in any revocation if they're in gross violation of the conditions of approval. approval, and I'll defer to the city attorney on any other means.
I'd like to make sure that every one of these requirements are met. In addition, I would like to request a petitioner not park at Beechwood, because we've received some information just recently of the overflow of parking that's taking place there. So can we restrict them through the chair to our city attorney from parking at Beechwood?
They have permission to park there?
Well, I'd like to ask our attorney, can we restrict them from parking at Beechwood?
Well, the parking area at Beechwood is for Beechwood's Recreation Center. And so if adjoining uses were to use it, you're not going to have sufficient parking then for Beechwood.
Which is what we received in our...
Right, I understand, but I think we would have to look at many of our parking lots throughout the city that serve our property are used by people that aren't necessarily frequenting our buildings. So I think if we're going to take that as a policy, we would need to be consistent on that policy, that those parking lots are used for city business only and not for, extraneous uses, which, I think at this point in time they are being. It wouldn't just be Beechwoods, but again, I think we built those lots to serve that facility, and we built the parking count in based on the use of that building. And so it is not supposed to be there for just use throughout the neighborhood. It's there to serve that facility.
So I'll ask the petitioner, can you not use Beechwood to park your cars?
I can't personally answer that. I don't
Can we
have
have
any.
somebody respond to that? So you can restrict your cars to your property and not use city property?
Yes, if we can construct a parking space in our property, we don't have to go to Beechwood.
Because our residents are being inconvenienced because there's not enough parking space there. If your car is further,
yes, we understand. Yeah, we understand. We don't have to go there. Yeah, thank you.
There's always United Center down the street, an equal distance shopping center, an equal distance probably from Beechwood to, that's an easy fix. All right, we have a motion on the floor. It's been supported by, or moved by Mr. Moss, supported by Mr. Frazier. Ms. Banks, I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on this one.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Perkins?
No.
Mr. Land?
Yes.
Mr. Moss?
Yes.
Ms. Seymour?
No.
Ms. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Sizer?
Yes.
There are 4 in favor, 3 against. The motion passed.
Mr. Crowe, make sure that those issues are looked into on the drainage report.
Okay, good evening, gentlemen. Next we have GP 1252, which is a special use request of Nick Samara, Extreme Fun LLC, on behalf of the owner of Northland Center. Mr. Crowe, I'll turn this over to you, and if the petitioner is in the house, I'd ask you to come forward.
Through the chair, this is GP 1252, a special use request of Nick Samara, Extreme Fun LLC, on behalf of the owner, Northland Center, Michigan, to locate a recreation center in the Northland Mall, located at 21500 Northwestern Highway, on the northeast side of Northwestern Highway between Northland Drive and Dale Hudson Drive. The Planning Department received the special use request on January 31st, 2013. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this matter on March 27, 2013, and made a favorable recommendation. I have a brief video to show before we get into discussion.
request of Nick Samara to locate a recreation center on the existing Northland Mall shopping center located at 21500 Northwestern Highway on the northeast side of Northwestern Highway between Northland and JL Hudson Drive in Section 36 of the city. The subject property as well as the properties to the south are zoned RS Regional Shopping. The property to the north is zoned RS Regional Shopping and ERO Education Research Office. The properties to the west across Northwestern Highway are zoned R4 Single Family Residential and ERO Education Research Office. The properties to the east across Greenfield Road are zoned for commercial uses within the city of Oak Park. With regard to the existing land uses, the subject property is developed with the Northland Mall. The properties to the north are developed with Providence Hospital, Tiny Town University Daycare, the Millennium Center, and the vacant hotel. The properties to the west across Northwestern Highway are developed with single-family homes, the Abundant Faith Baptist Church, and the vacant LA Fitness building. The properties to the south are developed with the Telecom Credit Union, a dialysis center, and the Northland Towers office buildings. The properties to the east across Springfield Road are developed with various commercial uses. The site contains 120 acres of land with 1,774.38 feet of frontage on Northwestern Highway and property depths which vary. The special use request reflects the conversion of the former TJ Maxx space on the northwest side of the existing Northland Mall shopping center to a 30,000 gross square foot recreation center. The special use request is required to allow a recreation center within the RS Regional Shopping Zoning District. Issues considered by the Planning Department during the review of the special use were: the proposal is in accordance with the Southfield Comprehensive Master Plan noting Cornerstone Development Authority sub-area for this parcel. The petitioner is to implement the recommendations made by the Southfield Police Department's Crime Prevention Bureau regarding site security. The petitioner is to receive an arcade license from the Southfield Building Department. And the petitioner is to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance for an arcade.
Through the chair, this is an interior use of the Northland Mall, former TJ Maxx site. It's similar to, I believe, Jeepers came under the same requirements. It does require meeting the arcade license requirements, but it's primarily for younger children, 12 and under. Inflatable toys, there are some arcades. I don't know if the representative of the owner is here. We did speak to him prior to the meeting, so I've not received any notification that he wouldn't be here. This has been a few months in the making, and I know they're anxious to open, but they're not here. I would, I mean, it's your discretion that maybe we at least hold a public hearing, and then you can decide if you want to take action or not. It's a use that is similar to other malls. They have many operations. We've seen many photographs and haven't had any issues with the operation of these.
My understanding is that this is for children 12 and under.
That's the primary age group.
They can't come alone. They must be accompanied by their parents.
That's correct.
It is not for teenagers. It's for 12 and under.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'll take a motion to put this on the floor. Oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead. I wish the petitioner was here. But I will declare the public hearing open then, and then we'll close the hearing and put this on the floor, see what we want to do.
Good evening. P.O. Box, my name is Pamela Gerald. P.O. Box 155, Southfield, Michigan 48037-0155. My telephone number is 248-352-9188. You asked the question that I was interested about, the age limit, and if it's 12 and under, I'm in total support of this project. But I'm happy about this being in Northland Mall mall. This is what this city has been attempting to do for probably 17 to 20 years and have failed, and that is to revitalize, the nation's oldest mall, regional mall, which is Northland, established in 1954. I'm hoping with it being in the mall and the children 12 and under, that the city will see the necessity for having more police officers, just to make sure that the children and the parents that will be supporting this business will feel safe. So I'm hoping that we have a police plan put in place, and that it could lead to hiring our 2 cadets, if they have not already been hired, as full-fledged police officers, and possibly increasing that pool and getting more officers. So I'm in total support. Thanks.
Thank you. This is a public hearing on a special use request for Northland Mall. Ms. Amato.
Good evening. Geraldine Amato, here in Southfield, and you have my address on the record there. This again is supporting a continual move against nature and the natural economy, and teaching the youngsters to be again confined indoors with synthetic creations, most of which are probably plastic. I have been living in this suburb since June. I never realized before, I've always lived in cities or in a while in the rural areas, that the suburbs had more toxins and more adverse physiological elements going on than any other area in our nations today, it seems. There's a heavy accent on looks and synthetic boosting of the economy with such things as recreation, tourism. There's analogies to be drawn to the Native American reservations, where tourism now and gambling on many of those reservations are the only economy. At one time, many of these Native Americans supported themselves in creative ways with providing their own food sources and clothing and such as that, and so did this area itself. Southfield apparently is a farming community, as I am reading plaques around town here, particularly in Bird Park, for example. There is no effort under the current order of things where the agendas are being set by people who are not good people, who control our central government in Washington, D.C., and upon which all these agendas are drafted according to their behind-the-scenes directives. And I'm reminded also of a recent announcement by the governor of the state, saying that he was going to recommend that this state legislature would allocate money to dredge the harbors around the lakes for the recreational harbors. When there are small, for example, small shippers who are having a difficult time because the feds have defaulted on dredging the commercial harbors, so it's the small guys that can't take the losses in the short term are going to go under. These trends are across this nation in every direction, and yet we could sit in a room like this and continue to mouth and support an overlord's agenda that don't have our best futures at heart. And since I'm not going to use up the 5 minutes here, and I'm sure this recreation center will go through because it's right in the plan with the usual stuff, but regarding the time limit here, which is arbitrarily set, and the fact that it's authoritarian-like, how would you say, enforced in authoritarian fashion, is evidence of the type of government we really live under. This is a not of, for, and by the people government. There is a hierarchy here, and as we go up, the higher you go up, I argue, the more corrupt, and we're required to follow the regulations and the rules of the most corrupt people in this nation who preside over our central government and every agency that comes out of it. This time limit, which is authoritarianly imposed, I wanted to express my outrage in being cut off with a blackout switch the last time I was at this microphone, without even saying that my time was up. I heard a 15-second. I thought it was just turning off the microphone, but I understand that the blackout switch, as far as the telecast is concerned, so it puts this meeting into instantaneous closed session for as far as the public is concerned out in TV land, wherever that may be. So the fact that arbitrary time limit, authoritarian imposition, and then you got a blackout switch there that you could arbitrarily and in an extreme fashion flip off anytime you feel like it. This is evidence of the real dynamics between the people and those who sit.
You have 15 seconds.
Are you going to give me my time's up this time? I'll leave you there.
Thank you.
Any questions?
It's a public hearing. Mr. Jones?
Yeah, this is Mr. Jones. I'm at 5,000 Town Center. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I wasn't going to originally speak. I was going to let this just go. But in light of the comments just made, I just want to say that I really think that this recreation center would be a good idea. You know, there's a lot of issues in society that may not be comfortable for us, but, you know, there's always going to be problems and challenges we have to come together and solve. However, Northland Shopping Center does need a venue for recreation and activity for the youth. And I've been talking about that as far as, you know, venues for people and young people to be productive so that they can have other outlets to, you know, be creative and release stress and tension. And I think that this is a great idea. It's a step in the right direction. You know, having some place for people to go and have a good time in Northland instead of wandering idle is definitely a good thing. And Mr. Amato, you know, there's always going to be problems, but I mean,
I'm saying something, excuse me.
Well, I mean, all I'm trying to say is that, you know, there's big problems, but this is something that can help the youth stay active. So it's a good thing. It's more of a positive than it is a negative. And to try and make this look negative, I just don't think it's the appropriate reaction. So, you know, I'm in full support of it, and I think that the whole of the Northland Shopping Center should be turned into a venue for productive youth activity. That's my comment.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to, all right, Ms. Smith?
Thank you. Yolanda Smith, 17580 Westland Avenue, Southfield, Michigan, 48075. Because I live in what is termed Northland Gardens, I felt it appropriate that I mention briefly. First, I would like to assume that the 12 and under policy will be easy for this company to adhere to, considering how 12-year-olds look 16 and 60-year-olds sometimes look 10. Also wondering if it's a fee to enter the premises, unlike maybe, well, Field Zone, I think there's a fee there as well. So just wondering if it's something to do with a school system, if this is a for-profit recreation center. The hours of operation give me a little bit of concern. I realize that they do have to have their parents with them. I just wonder if it's going to be open during the school day, because everyone 12 and under, generally Monday through Friday, should be in someone's school. And then finally, and it's probably the wrong platform, however, the revenue or the residuals from Northland Mall, it was shared with me that it doesn't really go to the citizens or the city of Southfield, and I think that's peculiar. It may be something that the city council and the other interested bodies might be able to look into for the future of our city and our revenue stream. That's all. Thank you. That's right.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. For the record, it's the school district of Oak Park that gets the revenue from Northland and the city of Southfield. Is there any other person who wishes to address the council on this issue? Hearing none, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed, and Mr. Crotty has to...
Yes, if I could, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council has. Seeing that the applicant isn't here, I would ask that you delay your decision tonight. As soon as we get through the public hearings, I'll step out of the room and try to contact the owner applicant to see if he's on his way, if there was some type of emergency before you make a final decision.
Okay.
President.
Yes. Yes.
I'm all for the project, but I'd like to meet the gentleman who is going to build it and run it. I want my own opinion of him. If he's not here tonight, just like the writer said, let's postpone it until we can meet the fellow who's doing the project. Makes sense.
Okay, the agreement for that, but, yeah, agreed?
Yes.
Ms. Seymour?
I understand it from reading this, this is a business, this is not unique, this is something that they do in other places.
That's correct. They do have other establishments similar to this in other malls, and there are other things like the Jeepers and the Dave & Buster's and so forth, except this is geared towards younger children.
Right, but and that's what I like about this, geared towards younger children, but this is not their first one. They
No,
have other.
that's correct.
And is this a local company or not?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I think the applicant is listed as Howell as his
No, Michigan.
address.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry, Mr. Percotte.
I'm sorry, but I really don't know who it was, and maybe his banks can remember, but because they had the same type of an operation at Northland some time ago.
Jeepers.
It was the Jeepers, they just didn't last. Is that what happened? They're not there anymore.
We didn't play there?
And you know, I don't mind waiting for somebody to come up, but I just don't think it's a great use for Northland. You know, I think that young people need recreation, but I don't think Northland is the place for it.
If I could, through the chair.
Yeah, well,
Just because, and again, I'm not debating what Mr. Percotte stated. I do know that Northland Management is in favor of it because they've requested that they be located in the former TJ Maxx site to generate foot traffic for the other retailers. It's not a permanent site, but it is a site that's currently vacant, it's underserved, and they feel that the family orientation and the foot traffic will help their other retail stores in the location. And again, I'm not here to defend, I just know that has come up as a comment from the Northland Mall management.
okay. Mr. Fraser is next.
Yes, a couple of questions. The first one is, in reading the material, it says that parents have to accompany the child in the place. When you were going through the planning cycle, does the parent have to stay on premise all the time that this child is there? Because if they can bring the child in, be there for 15 minutes, and when nobody's looking, leave and go walking around the mall, then the child is kind of unsupervised?
I would say that's my belief, from what I recall, but I don't want to unequivocally state that. I would defer that to the owner, but my understanding is it's not a drop-off, come back later.
I know it says that they have to be there, but I think that's where trouble starts. If the parent is there for a little bit and, now Johnny, you be okay, you be good, because I've got to run up and buy some stuff, I got to go to Macy's, and I'll be back in 20 minutes, that could be a concern. That's a question more suitable.
And I'll defer that to the applicant.
Yes, and the second question I have is, during the planning process, was the applicant at all of the meetings that they were required to be at?
The applicant was at all the meetings and or representative, but we did have somebody there at each of the meetings.
Okay,
It wasn't the same person. One was the applicant owner, I think one was a manager for his other store when he wasn't able to attend, but we always had somebody present at our meetings.
That could speak for the...
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so I don't know if an effort was made to let them know about tonight or not.
And again, Mr. Spence was here last week, is that he's very diligent, routine, follow-up, second follow-up. I know the DDA contacted me today. They were aware that this was on, they are in favor of it. So again, sometimes things happen. I can't speak for that, and I would like to at least make a phone call after our public hearings are done, just to find out what's going on.
Well, I think really, unless you're standing up front, it's going to delay the meeting, and I think the best course of action is to postpone it to a date certain.
And I agree that ultimately might be, but given the number of speakers, a half an hour might be enough to have him show up, and I at least like to try on his behalf.
Yeah, but you have to be here for the other speakers.
Yes, I do.
Could we postpone this for a little later in the meeting and to see if he shows up? And the reason I'm suggesting is that this wouldn't be able to come back probably until June, another month at least. And if they're eager to, if it's approved and they're eager to get into business, I don't want to be delaying them unnecessarily. So I'm in favor of letting Mr. Crowe see if he can contact somebody, see if something happened, there was an accident, emergency, and then if he's not coming, then we will do a postponement later in this meeting. So, Ms. Attorney, can we have an informal postponement, or do we need a vote?
Yeah, I think you can just indicate that it's being deferred now till the end of the meeting, and at that time you'll either do a postponement or if the representative will take it up.
All right, and Mr. Lance wants to make a final comment, but then we'll defer this and move on.
Okay, with all the talking and everything, it came to me that I would like a background check before we make a decision on this project.
So we
Have the children below 12.
we could make that a condition, the police department do some vetting of the owner?
That also may be part of the arcade license that he'll have to acquire.
I believe that is.
So he would be getting a background check to get the arcade license.
There's an arcade within the, Mr. Lance, there's an arcade within the Extreme Fun Center. There are various stations, and then there's sort of a walled-off room with our
Who does the background check in those Northland Mall?
No, it would be done through our police department.
Yeah.
The police department.
Our city ordinance requires the background check if you're opening an arcade. There is an arcade in this facility, proposed facility.
But this is a business for children under 12.
Right.
I haven't met the gentleman. I don't know who he is. And I'm not going to vote. These are postponements. If he doesn't show up, postpone it. I'm not going to vote for it.
All right.
Unless he shows up and talks to me. Talks to us.
That's what we're all saying.
We are.
We're all saying that same thing.
We're going to give him an opportunity to show up, and if he doesn't, then we'll postpone.
Even if he shows up now, I want a background check.
Okay. Well, I'm going to defer it for right now, and we'll come back.
Okay.
All right? All right. Okay, so this is deferred. So we're going to move on to item D, which is GP 1244, and this is an P. It's an amendment to Article 4, General Provisions of our zoning ordinance, and it has to do with wireless communications facilities. I'm going to ask that for a motion to postpone this to a date certain.
So move, Mr. President.
We need more discussion on this. It's been moved by Mr. Perkins, supported by Ms. Jordan.
Do we have the date?
Through the chair, I believe I was given June 3rd as a possible study session and June 17th to come back to a regular meeting.
Yes, sir. So the date certain would be June 17th.
June 3rd.
So the public hearing would be on the 7th.
June 3rd would be the study session.
Right. And the 17th would be the hearing?
Yeah. Pending the outcome.
of June 3rd.
Exactly.
It would just be June 3rd as opposed to the postponement.
But we wouldn't be postponing the actual public hearing to June 3rd.
Postponing the discussion until June 3rd. The public hearing at a later date.
No, correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney, but we
Because we don't know what's going to happen in the discussion.
No, but we need, with the public hearing, you need to set a date certain.
tonight for the public hearing, you will have to re-advertise in the newspaper what date the public hearing will be. So there's a benefit to simply saying tonight on this item that it is being postponed to a date certain for the public hearing and decision.
Right. We're still going to have the further information that council needs on this, and that's tentatively scheduled for June 3rd. And so the motion should be to June 17th, correct, Ms. Banks?
June 17th is correct.
June 17th.
I also move, Mr. President.
I'll support that.
And it's been moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we postpone the public hearing on D. Then on E is GP 1254-P to amend Article 2 definitions of the zoning ordinance by deleting a section of 5.4 and inserting a new section, and this has to do with carports. We're also going to, I'm going to ask that this also be postponed because there's a point here regarding height restrictions that was not reviewed by council.
Through the chair.
Yeah.
Could I ask if council is comfortable, they could act on the carport definition and postpone the exception to height to a later date as well?
I'm fine with that.
And if I could, just to introduce, last month the council upgraded or amended the definition of garage private, where we excluded carport, and we felt that it was necessary to also add a definition of carport to be consistent with the definition of garage private, which the council is considering for enactment tonight. So those two go part and parcel with each other. With regards to the exception of height, I will defer to discussing that at a later date.
Okay. All right. A technical question, Mr. Crowe. Will the height then necessitate another public hearing? It will?
Well, I think we can do I'll defer to the city attorney. We can hold a public hearing tonight, or you could defer the public hearing to the 17th as well.
I think we need to defer the whole thing.
Okay.
Because then you have that public hearing and you're not even ready to discuss what the heights are, so it seems like if you...
So I will, and it'll be the same thing, June 3rd and June 17th. So I need a motion for
support.
A date certain, June 17th. Moved by Ms. Jordan, supported by Mr. Moss. All those in favor?
Just a quick, we're only doing the height?
No, we're postponing the whole thing because it needs a public hearing.
That's okay. There's no immediate need to act on
Okay.
anything tonight.
Okay.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Is it, so then will that matter also come back before the council on June 3rd for COW discussion?
And Mr. Charette, I'll ask you to make a note of that as we plan future agendas.
Yes, I've noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
If I could just note, I did check the ordinance on the arcade license, and that does require a background check by our chief of police.
Okay. And regarding this, Mr. Crowe, before you leave, one of the questions I would have is, and I was hoping the petitioner would have been here, is just on overall security of this venue, besides whatever Northland provides. That would have been my question had he or she been here. Okay. We are now at a point in our agenda where we move on to communications. And we had a meeting at 5:30 that ran over, and very graciously, someone who was on communications at 5:30 said, I would be happy to forego my time slot now because I know you're going into a 7 o'clock meeting. So we appreciate that. So Mr. Gunther, I'm going to ask that you come first, as you did ask to speak following council protocol, and we just ran out of time for you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Lawrence. My name is Harmon Gunther. I reside at 19101 Green Spruce in Southfield. I'm also a member of the Commission on Senior Adults. We gave 2 new members tonight, or one new member. Towards the end of the last council meeting, Mayor Lawrence reiterated the desire for more security in the lobby of this building. I would not mind cameras being installed to cover the front doors and the city clerk's counter. As recent events have shown, big brother watching is not always a bad thing. I would also request that automatic doors be installed at the front entrance. It is difficult for someone using a cane and carrying something in the other hand to open the doors. The population growth in Southfield, age 60 plus, grew 60%, from 14,894 in 2000 to 17,233 in 2010. That means that the 60-plus population is increasing by an average of 331 additional seniors each year, or about 6 more each week. We are getting larger. By 2015, Southfield will have more seniors and school-aged children, and by 2020, we'll have nearly twice as many older adults as school-aged children. There's one senior center in 15 public schools in Southfield. I would encourage the City Council to work with Parks and Rec and the Board of Education to come up with a plan where we can have a senior center in the Northfield section of the city, where seniors can utilize the school's library, classrooms, pool, and auditorium after the school day is done. Switch aside a little bit. Sue Savis is leaving her position as Director of Human Services. We on the board of COSA are sad to see her leave. Is there hope of a replacement for her to ensure that the welfare of our senior community is maintained and to act as the liaison of COSA? We are always looking for new members to the board of COSA, so anyone interested in joining us, please come to a meeting on the 3rd Thursday at 3:30 p.m. at the Senior Center in McDonald Towers. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gunther. All right, we're now going to proceed with the regularly scheduled communications, and the first person is Ms. Pamela Gerald. And again, thank you, Mr. Gunther, for your consideration. Good evening, Ms. Gerald.
Good evening. My name is Pamela Gerald. I am and I have been an independent voice for Southfield voters. You have seen me at this podium week after week addressing your concerns and problems for a very long time. Voters, it's time for a change. If you're listening to my voice via YouTube or audio reproduction, or on Cable 15, I can be reached at P.O. Box 155, Southfield, Michigan, 48037-0155, or by telephone at 248-352-9188. I'm just a phone call away or a click away via email. Voters, whenever you hear a siren, someone in public safety is risking their lives for you, one of your neighbors, someone you know, or someone else in the city. Council, are we serious about public safety here in Southfield? How are we treating our police officers? Let me tell you how this city is treating our police officers. Last year, this city went into arbitration with our police officers because they refused to give our hard-working police officers a contract. Our police officers have not, and I repeat, not had an acceptable contract since 2008. I don't even think our police officers have had a raise, a legitimate raise, that they haven't taken back in 10 years. We talk about a standard in Southfield, yet we disrespect and humiliate our police by dragging them through a lengthy arbitration, and they didn't win, and that's sad. The police officers lost the arbitration. This is what your city took from our valued police officers. Number one, this dropped the retirement pension fund. Officers only guaranteed 4% regardless of how many years they work, and the city makes interest or money on that money. Have any of you executives or members of council taken a pay cut? No. Number two, the city used to pay into an annuity for our officers, like they did for the city attorney and other executive level employees. The city now takes 5% from the officers. We're supposed to be broke, yet the executives get free cars, free trips, free food, free gas. You guys get to go on these elaborate seminars that you may be using as a vacation. I don't know. But what are you bringing back from those meetings when you go to the Michigan Municipal League, the National League of Cities? What have you brought back that's productive for the residents? And I'm going to question that again and again and again. This city took the longevity percentage from the officers, which means that if they worked for 35 years, they would get a percentage based on their tenure. Now the city has bamboozled and duped our police officers by giving them a flat rate. So now what is the motivation for the police officers not to retire? What is the motivation? The motivation, I think, is the people, keeping the people safe. But you guys are really, really, really ruining the morale within the police department. You did a good thing. You hired the best man for the job, for the chief of police. That was a good thing. But what about the user-friendly leadership that my creative mentor, Josh Linkner, talks about? This is not being user-friendly leadership to the people when you can't even sit down and do right by the police officers by giving them a contract. And, you know, how do you allow people to retire and then come back and make just as much money as they made when they were here working? Okay, you give them a contract, you don't give them benefits. How do you allow a part-time person to take their time and put it in a pension and then get paid for it? That's one thing that I don't quite understand, but I'm going to start going to those retirement, pension, and civil service commission meetings because I want to learn about that to see if that's being done right. So, council, let me just say this in closing. It's the police that responds within 3 to 5 minutes, not you. Council, it's the police that risk their lives every day for us when they get the radio call, not you. And any call could be their last call. Council, it's the police working longer hours for less money under the auspices of more with less, but now it's less with an even lesser amount. I'm putting you on notice. If you continue at this rate, you are jeopardizing the people's public safety and our lives because, again, you have crushed the morale within the police department. But you did give us the best possible candidate for chief, and that is Chief Eric Hawkins. So I want you guys to know that these police officers should not have to fight the criminals on the streets and the administration, too. Thank you.
Mr. Lance, you have a comment?
I would like to tell Madam Gerald
Thank you.
some truth, and you haven't told the truth. We as a council make a fraction of what the police officers make. It costs me extra money to be a council person, my own money, my own expenses, okay? And you say what you said. I think in the near future you're still going to have time to come up to our rostrum and speak. Answer? You're shaking your head. I doubt it.
I can't hear.
I doubt it.
I can't hear.
But our police officers are not as bad as you say, and we are not as bad as how we treat our police officers.
Our
They're
police
terrific
officers
people.
are terrific because they're working without
We're not having a debate, Ms.
They're
Gerald.
working without a contract.
You
They
had
are
your moment
terrific,
to speak.
loyal and dedicated.
Next, we have Mr. Gerard Mullen.
Thank you.
Our next speaker. Good evening, Mr. Mullen.
Good evening, Dr. Simon. Mr. President, my name is Gerard Mullen. My address is gerardmullen2012@gmail.com. Tonight, I'd like to address the state of Michigan's noxious weeds law in reference to notifications to violators. The state law gives local governments like Southfield two options or two methods for notification. The first option, method A, is where the violator is notified by mail. so that the violator has an opportunity to correct the situation or the problem so as not to incur a charge and or a possible fine. The second option, method B, is the draconian method. This option, sad to say, is the option that this council has chosen. Under method B, this city notifies residents by publishing a legal notice in a local newspaper during the month of March, announcing that beginning the 1st of May, this city may enter upon your land for the purpose of destroying your noxious weeds. Unfortunately, the March legal notice that was published contains 4 legal errors. Error number 1, the notice references the wrong state law. It cites as its controlling authority, that is, the city's right to enter upon your land, Public Acts, or PA 48 of 1984, a tax law, a general property tax law, and not a noxious weeds law. This city erroneously used a tax law as its authority to enter upon your land, and in doing so, this city committed the act of trespassing. Yes, trespassing. The noxious weeds law is PA 58 and not 48. After many, many years, this error was finally caught in 2013 and corrected. But the March 2013 notice is not applicable to this April's hearing. The 2013 notice, which is riddled with many legal errors of its own, is applicable to the folks that will be gathering here next April. Error number 2, the notice states that a violator is subject to a fine of not more than $500, whereas PA 58, the state law limits punishment to a $100 fine. Error number 3, the notice referenced the city ordinance number 1274, which not only contains...
Mr. Mullen, one second. In the back of the room, there's a conversation going on, and we're having trouble hearing the speaker. Excuse me. In the back of the room, there's a conversation going on, and we're having trouble hearing Mr. Mullen, who's got the floor. I'm sorry, Mr. Mullen.
Thank you. Error number 3. The notice refers to city ordinance number 1274, which not only contains the $500 fine, but also states additionally imprisonment, that is jail time, for not more than 90 days. Whereas PA 58, the state law limits punishment to a $100 fine, period. Please note, as you can plainly see, city ordinance number 1274 is non-compliant with state law, and therefore has already compromised next year's public hearing via March 13th legal notice. Error number 4, the notice extracts and conflates 2 separate issues contained within city ordinance number 1274, and by doing so, the notice implies that it's okay to grow noxious weeds in Southfield. This long-standing error was finally caught in 2013 and corrected, but the March 2013 notice is not applicable for tonight's hearing. In a word, residents have been persecuted with a botched and bogus legal notice published by an illiterate, incompetent, draconian city council. My advice to the affected residents is that you get yourself together with your fellow residents in order to form a coalition to bring about a class action lawsuit against this city for trespassing upon your land and for collecting monies and or trying to collect monies illegally from you. Additionally, I would also recommend to you and your future coalition that later this year, at election time, that you folks start pruning the wheat Nazis from this council. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, and have a happy, happy birthday.
I would just correct one thing that you said, Mr. Mullen, and that is, well, I'll correct the thing I'm authority on. People are given notice. They aren't, we do not go on their property without notice. They're given notice that they have an issue on their property they need to correct. Photographs are taken and dated by our code officers. We also have scores of conditions are hazards to public health. And I'm talking more than weeds, I'm talking about litter and vermin and one thing after another. So we're going to continue to uphold our neighborhood appearances. Next we have Mr. Brian Jones.
Okay, Mr. Jones at harmonious.wavelengths@gmail.com. Phone number 248-979-5354. And on the lighter note, just trying to boost community morale and unity with a short speech. Okay, Southfield, a Renaissance city, a model for America, an example for the world. I, Brian Rashad Jones, do solemnly pledge allegiance to the productivity of Southfield, Michigan as a Renaissance city and a guiding light of hope and prosperity for the nation by way of an urban reemergence initiative. Southfield, Michigan is not only a melting pot of economic wealth and Fortune 500 momentum, but also a conglomerate of ethnic diversity and potential. We in Southfield, Michigan have every opportunity to show by example how the United States can make a socio-economic comeback. By collectivizing and synergizing all the elements in our community, both cultural, corporate, and academic, to present a template for the national modular trend in community recultivation. We in Southfield, Michigan have a unique experience based on a potent foundation for rapid regenesis, coupled with a fervent history and accompanying past glory shared as a neighboring component of the heyday in Metro Detroit. Basically stated, the past, present, and future of Southfield, Michigan is filled with prosperity and unexplored glory. And our problems may lay hidden future, solution-spawning assets with the proper utilization of all inclusive and surrounding elements. Being stated, the said elements are revealed in the obvious as well as the undiscovered or untapped resources unfolding to express the unlimited potential with respect to human labor wealth, corporate and academic collaborations, growth, and collaborative projects as a platform for the development of the surrounding theme of institutions in parallel program unison with the city's reconstruction. The Fortune 500 pool of professional executives, as well as technical engineering talent, can serve as an investment catalyst in the exponential growth of the surrounding academic institutions such as Lawrence Technical University and Oakland Community College, with potential partners and corporate neighbors such as Denso International, Microsoft, BASF, Fifth and Third Bank, and a myriad of technically based research and development institutions, as well as those housing prosperous automotive interests. Growth of academic institutions, complete with the expansion of sports programs and research centers, as well as venues for the expression of both creative and liberal arts programs, provides a temple for not only community transformation, but city pride and social excitement as a driving force for continuous growth and enterprise. Adding cultural flavor and exotic entertainment by the vehicle of potential foreign investment through the invitation of restaurant city strips on its streets set aside to cater to the introduction of a growing Chinese and Russian capacity for economic contribution and stimulation is also a positive prospect for Southfield, Michigan's interest. The previously stated effort can fuel Southfield, Michigan's growth in parallel with the advent of international language schools, setting the stage for comfortable global relations, ties, and business interest into the far-sighted future. With the induction of foreign investment by way of the restaurants, language schools, cultural centers, and novelty stores capacities, does Southfield, Michigan introduce the state of Michigan into a newfound era of international enterprise and cultivation for the benefit of homeland productivity. The undercurrent of cultural and ethnic tensions, displacement, and disenfranchisement among pre-existing minority bases and potentially newly introduced foreign scholastic or professional personas can be resolved by the proper placement, housing, and production of practical employment options for every group according to existing or easily cultivated skill sets. City security, whether private or government-sponsored, and urban custodial venues for employment to keep neighborhoods both clean and safe should be made available for those minority bodies within the Southfield city limits, as well as the peripheral neighboring communities to assist the already exemplary services of SFPD, fire rescue, and park and recreation as facilitators of a safe residential and commercial environment. Additional projects and programs to assist the securing of neighborhood safety and the deterrent of crime can also include a Southfield, Michigan initiative for a statewide don't ask, don't tell policy for those wishing for cash assistance in return for the recycling of weapons, inclusive of regions struggling with high percentages in violent crimes involving firearms.
and a streamlined effort with the national gun control policies, while those desiring the retention of their arms are allowed the option to participate in the security details or law enforcement potentialities and in cooperation with the National Homeland Security Program outlined.
15 seconds, Mr. Jones.
In light of the unfortunate circumstances of recent events, the safety and security of Southfield, Michigan residents, as well as private and corporate interests, must become a top priority without question. The advent of increased private security details as a monitoring and prevention capacity will generate employment opportunities and assist local law enforcement efforts.
Time is up. I know you stay up late from your email, thinking about all of these things.
I got like one more. Can you please let me finish?
I'll let you finish next meeting. Okay.
I only got one more.
You've emailed all of this to me. Thank you very much. Okay. You know, we truly appreciate your concern for the community and the thinking that you put into it. But I have to be fair to the other speakers, and there are numerous people yet to speak this evening. Ms. Amato, you are next.
Good evening, Geraldine Amato, Southfield. You didn't use the blackout switch even when you said his time was up.
I don't have a blackout switch, Ms. Amato.
You did it last time. Weather, I wanted to take a minute to talk about the weather. I've enjoyed your winter and your cool spring, not your hot, humid, flea-infested summer of last year. I lost my little dog in November, and I thought maybe I pushed him over the edge by dousing him with those industrial chemicals that the veterinarians use, but they assure me that wasn't the case. However, I still wonder about that. I live in a place visiting that have carpets. I was worried about the people's carpets getting infested with fleas, so I submitted my dogs to that. There's something going on in this area with the lawnscapes because my larger dog is scratching all the time once I walk through this area here. I'm just walking here today. So I know where I'm staying with the condominiums, they have all these chemicals they throw on their lawns. There's chemical fertilizer, chemical pesticides, herbicides. All of this is contrary to good environmental well-being for the rest of us, and we should be doing something other than what we're doing, but you don't even hear anything being discussed publicly. I want to make a couple of corrections from last time. I said the wrong name. I meant to say Franklin Roosevelt. There's history about the financial and the banks that is not taught us in schools or in the mainstream press, that Roosevelt had issued an executive order saying that it was against the law to hoard gold and to export it, and that people were to turn in their gold on May Day, May 1st. That executive order was April 5th, 1933, and then there was another one subsequent to that he passed regarding gold holdings of the people, and apparently many people voluntarily handed in their their gold. On your presentation about the Armenian genocide, one thing I never hear announced here, and the JPFO is an organization that's in a neighboring state that's used for the preservation of firearms ownership. I know they too are compromised from within, as all organizations today in this nation are if they're incorporated under that IRS status. But you never hear about them. Their opinions are a little bit more radical and a little more historically correct, and yet the NRA is highlighted in the press. I consider the NRA like a double agent, a controlled opposition group. They're working for the same side, but they pretend to be opposing the other, and both of those sides are controlled by the same folks. In the recent atrocities perpetrated in Boston, the good people of this nation don't do the investigations. They don't cover the press. The mouthpieces in the press are required to do what the editors tell them. There are no free agents today as journalists. They'd be fired if they try, and then their pieces do not get published. We have the government mouthpieces also, and the educational mouthpieces from mouthpieces like from Harvard and Princeton. They do their thing in the mainstream press. The good people don't control these agencies today, and we are under a mass propaganda campaign. We are told, for example, in the press that a suspect is arrested, but he's also convicted in the press, but he's a suspect according to the language used. We were told that in Boston, there was license taken in invading people's homes, telling them to leave while they searched their house, and apparently without warrants. This is all ominous. We, the people, don't do the investigations. We're told what the findings are, what the investigation is about, and I have seen this at a local level where I have been in New Mexico, and I was hoping to have returned. I meant to mention the thing about the weather. I hoped to have some firm plans to return because I wanted to avoid a hot, humid summer in this area. Hot and dry is easier to take than hot and humid, but we have also a fire watch now in New Mexico and a drought, just as you have a drought here. And a well went dry on some property that I have my focus on. They told me a couple of weeks ago the well was dry, and I can't haul water, so that's out. But the only thing about...
Mr. Mato, you have 15 seconds.
15 seconds. Well, I'm running out of time here, and I won't be given any question and answer, but let me say that in 2011, the summer, an suffocating ash cloud came from Colorado into the Albuquerque Valley, and people use what they call slump.
And your time is up.
You're not even interested in
you.
You get what that meant? See that? How different.
My hands are in the air. I didn't touch it.
Who's the one cutting off the microphone? So put it into blackout for me.
The next speaker is Mr. Toby Rhodes.
But I do want to say, Mr. President, that speaker being, the mic being cut off should apply to everybody else that goes to that mic. So I don't know who's doing it, but just to be fair,
Absolutely.
went over the time in that.
The only person that's gone over time is Mr. Mato.
But somebody, Brian Jones, his mic was still on even.
I told him to stop speaking.
Yeah, so whoever is doing it, let's make sure that we're fair in turning off the mic.
If I was cutting you out, I could understand you turning it off.
I agree with you.
I might be
fair.
Okay.
I don't know who's turning it off, but
Mr. Rhodes, the floor is yours.
My name is Toby Rhodes, 170001, New Jersey, Southfield, Michigan, 48075. I want to talk about the Southfield City Attorney, William J. Richardson, and Southfield Police, and their race war that they're waging against black people.
Mr. Rhodes, I'm going to interrupt you once again, as I did last time you were here. I will not permit you to say blasphemous things about individuals. It's not fair. They're not in the room. And this is not the forum to take that kind of grievance.
So you're saying that you don't want to hear from a member of the community?
We've told you before.
You said we. Who's we?
This body has told you before.
I don't even remember you saying something.
Mr. Rhodes, I'm going to tell you once again, you can take your grievance to the Judicial Tenure Commission.
That's not the issue here.
You can take your grievance to the city administration.
That's not the issue here.
You can write to the council and mayor about your issue.
That is not the issue here. The issue is having to deal with the Southfield Police, the city attorney, and 46th District Court targeting black people. Why can't black people speak about their grievances or their issues in the community? We live here, we pay taxes, why is it we can't speak? That's all I'm trying to figure out. We have problems, we're trying to get them resolved. I mean, you see what happens in cities where black people don't get an opportunity to speak, the whole community gets torn down. I'm trying to speak out right now so people have a voice. There are a lot of black people who are being attacked by the Southfield Police who feel like they need someone to speak out for them or need to speak out what's happening to them. And you're saying that, no, they don't.
What I'm saying to you is you cannot, I do not want you to mention individuals by name. You are certainly free to address this body with your grievance.
Okay, and police is not anybody by name. Police is an imaginary word.
I heard the name of the judge.
Okay, then I won't say that. But the 46th District Court is just an imaginary word. City Attorney's Office is just an imaginary word. It's not people. It's not a person. There's not someone says, oh, that's actionable against me, because it's just an office. It's a legal fiction.
Proceed.
Southfield Police are waging a race war against black people in the city of Southfield. People say, oh, it's all about security, but it's not about security at all. They're just robbing black people. I mean, I go on, walk throughout the city, and I see Southfield Police pulling people over. Because someone explained it to me like this. They said it's a lot easier. They said if a real security issue where someone gets raped or murdered, you got to go through a long investigation, investigate the crime, investigate, question witnesses, and best case scenario, at the end of the month, you get one arrest maybe, and then you got to go to trial. But just pulling people over on the street and taking their property, taking their freedom, hitting them with charges, getting overtime, that's easy. And they prey on black people because where black people going to go? They don't have anyone who's going to listen to them. They don't have anyone who's going to hear their grievances. They don't have anyone who's going to speak up for them. And in fact, when they try to bring up grievances, people keep trying to shut them down. And so it was explained to me exactly what was happening. They said that black people are targeted. And it's through a 6-point process. One, identification. You identify the group you're targeting, black people. How do you define them? Find a general physical description, skin color, facial features, cheekbones, nose, and say, okay, that's the group we want to target. The next group is ostracism. Everything that you can associate with black people, you make negative. And you define what black. So you look at their food, you look at what they wear, you look at the way they dress, where they go, and you say, so if they eat a certain food, it's not food, it's black food. If you look at clothes they wear, it's black clothes. If you look at places they go, that's the black place to go. So that's ostracism. And then you associate all these negative things. If there's crime, if there's unemployment, if there's poverty, all that black stuff. And so now black people are ostracized. The next step is isolation. Now you say, oh, well, you know what? Let's not do business with them. Let's not give them loans. Let's not give them any opportunity, because that's the black neighborhood. That's where black people live. And so now you're isolated. Of course, once you're isolated, now everybody sees you as other. They see you as different. They don't see you as American. They see you as not the lawyer. They see the black lawyer, not the doctor, the black doctor, not the councilman, the black councilman. And so they think that's an excuse to deprive you of your rights, freedom, and your property. And so then the next thing they do is they send in the police. And the police go through the process of what's called confiscation. They take your property, your freedom, and your liberty. And so now you have absolutely no protection. Then the next step, once they have, they've confiscated everything you have, then they go to a process called separation or segregation. And usually that's when you get into concentration camps, you get into prisons, you get into reservations. And then that's the slow step to the last step called annihilation, where they totally wipe you out. Now, black people have been moderating between confiscation and separation. We haven't gotten to the step of annihilation, but that's where we headed unless we stop the Southfield police from preying on it all the time. Because we don't have any voice once it gets up to the city attorney's office, because she's going to rubber stamp that. I'm not she, I don't she, whatever. It's going to rubber stamp everything, and they're going to just rob us of everything we got, because that's how they pay their bills, is by seizing our property and taking from us, because where are we going to go? We don't have anyone to speak up for us. We don't have any black men in 46th District Court. Never had any black men, but hundreds, thousands of black men have been accused. You're looking at the Southfield police.
You have 15 seconds.
Okay, you have the watch commanders, you have the detectives, you have patrol. That's rare. I've almost never seen any black men. We have a real problem because it's a race war against black people in Southfield.
Okay, Mr. Rhodes. Next we have Mr. Richard Meltzer. Good evening, Mr. Meltzer.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Richard Meltzer, 20850 Wayne, Southfield. Most council members should remember back 5 years ago when the neighborhoods surrounding Inglewood Park made it clear that they did not want the park turned into Softball City with all the attendant problems that could bring. Those problems include traffic congestion, light pollution, late-night activities, including crowd noise and disruptive behavior, especially from teens, and increased vendor activities, among other concerns. And those vendors do need to be managed. And as was true back then, as is the case now, many of the users of the park do not live or work in Southfield. We thought we had an understanding with council. We thought we had an agreement. So you can imagine our surprise and disappointment to find out that the parking lot is to be expanded and that there is a tentative arrangement under consideration sponsored by Country Day School to install lights at the ball fields within the park. First, let me say that we feel that the city was remiss in not first contacting local residents about any proposed late into the evening, very late into the evening. In the summer, daylight remains until about 10 p.m., so we were talking well beyond that. And that's too late for our neighborhoods. Ball fields that are designed for commercial utilization have large geographical buffers between the fields and any residential areas. Ours do not. And as far as generating more revenue for the city, I suggest that's penny wise and pound foolish. It's getting harder to maintain our neighborhoods. Any additional detriments chip away at the desirability of our real estate. And nearby late-night activities under bright lights is not something prospective home buyers seek. So we ask that the city take a big-picture view of the circumstance and not devalue the neighborhoods that surround the park. And again, keep in mind that many visitors to the park and many of the softball leagues are not from Southfield. So, what do we want from the city? We want to be immediately included in a dialogue about parking expansion before it takes place. And since we are opposed to lights being installed in Englewood Park, we see no further point in any department of the city engaging in any further discussion with Country Day or anyone else about that issue. No softball city. Lastly, we'd like to go on record that local residents will always want to be involved in any discussion regarding future considerations regarding park alteration or utilization. I would like to maybe make one last comment as a postscript. When this issue was before us all about 5 years ago, you know, we were looking at problems and we were kind of assured, well, we're going to assign a park ranger to handle mischief and other late night behavior. And I and others had suggested to the council that ranger would never last in a budget as we move down the timeline. And I ask you to consider, with hindsight, who was right. We'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Next we have, I'm sorry, Mr. Lane.
Yes, I don't know anything about lights being put in the neighborhood. Your microphone?
Your mic, you're not turning your mic.
Is that true?
There is no proposal before council, however, there is...
A long time ago, I remember, and we turned it down.
There is a proposal that is before the Parks and Rec Board. It has not come to council.
So,
I
do they have...
communicated with Mr. Meltzer by email that I told him only what I know, and he's pretty much captured that this evening, that there is a proposal. I assume Mr. Meltzer is here to remind us of an earlier conversation we had. Again, nothing has come to council.
So does the Parks and Rec Board have the power to install lights?
No, they don't. They would make a recommendation to the council for disagreement. And again, there is no recommendation to us.
Nothing has come to us.
And I'm not playing games with words. There isn't. And the feasibility of whether Country Day can make good on their proposal is unknown. As far as I know, it was an idea that was discussed. It was not. I haven't seen anything in writing, and nothing has come to us officially.
Mr.
I've
Chairman.
never heard.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perkasi?
Yeah, I would just like to make a comment when they reflect on lights. The new lights are nowhere near what you see at Southfield High School or Southfield Laser School, where you have condominiums that directly in back of the stands, and they're very beautiful homes, especially in Lathrop Village and back right up to Lathrop School. So I really don't, I'm not saying that I'm for or against light. I'm just saying is that you know, let's look at the city and the schools throughout Michigan, and beautiful homes are built right around them. You have a ball field, a football lights and whatever have you. So I'm just saying that in some neighborhoods, some residents don't mind being next to a football field, and they maintain beautiful homes and landscaping. And I guess I see Mrs. English back there, but I live on Monterey, and I live right next to the park, and they play ball there, and I love to go over there and watch them play ball. I think it's great to see kids. I was over there today, matter of fact, watching the kids at the park going on all the kiddie things, and all the people there are enjoying it and parking, and it's not only baseball people use the parking. You have walkers, you have kids that use the kiddie park there, and I don't know. It's a very, very upbeat park, probably one of the nicest parks in the city, in the area, in fact. So it draws buses from outside the city, but, it was federally state funded, so you can't prohibit it. So, anyway, I just keep talking about comparisons and what goes on in neighborhoods, and I don't know why people speak against Southfield expanding its Parks and Rec when others do, and everybody applauds what they have, and we have to listen to them, and we just curtail those kinds of things in our city.
Okay. Next we have Ms. Stephanie English. Good evening, Ms. English.
Hi, everyone. Stephanie English, 28735 San Carlos, Southfield 48076. I actually was not going to speak on the park thing because I thought Richard did it well enough. However, now I need to address it. Mr. Doug Block has been very open and transparent with this program that has been proposed by Country Day. It is similar to the Brother Rice issue, and what I want the council to do is to refer back to the September 10th, 2008 minutes of the special meeting regarding this park issue. It is in writing, all of your decisions and your comments. This was supposed to be a deal that was killed unless it was given and delivered back to the residents for, again, consideration. It is a parallel program to the same issue, just a different school. Instead of Brother Rice, it's Country Day. They don't evidently have the property or the availability of land to create their own sports infrastructure, so they want to utilize it at Southfield. I will say, as I have done in terms of fact-finding with the rest of the neighbors and what their views are, nobody's opposed to the Parks and Rec expanding their program. We're opposed to lights. Lights bring a different infrastructure change that jeopardizes or compromises the integrity of the neighborhood. For example, in 2008, the back deal that Mr. Waterhouse actually had that wasn't presented to the neighbors, that if the light panels were installed on Eagle Nook Park, there was a flat rock hardball league that was in alignment with this deal, where 41 teams were going to pay $4,500 per team to play hardball games at the park. That wasn't disclosed to us. We had to find it out because there was a gentleman that was lingering at all of the neighborhood conversation or impact meetings, and we didn't know who he was. In doing our research, we found out that this Flat Rock Hardball League was kicked out of Flat Rock because of behavior or issues pertaining to the police department reports or what have you, but then they were going to be playing here. I didn't want to disclose all of that, but you have to just call it as it is. There is a deal on the table, Mr. Lance. You can check with Mr. Block. It has gone through the Parks and Rec Commission. And what it is that they have to have so much money to guarantee this particular program, and they don't have the money yet. They've applied for a $150,000 grant to put into this escrow account, and I understand for this program to go forward, they need at least $400,000. Again, you live in my subdivision, Mr. Fracassi, and a lot of the neighbors don't mind the expansion, but you have to see what goes along with it. One of the neighbors that opposed it was talking about how the current sports teams are cooking fish at a lot of the ball games in the summer and selling fish dinners. But what they do when they cook the hot grease, they're pouring it in our sewer system. Now, that I know is not supposed to go on. One thing that lights do is it expands the nighttime. That neighborhood is serene at 10 o'clock, and I think that Mother Nature should be our time clock when everybody is supposed to go home. And that's not a Stephanie English issue. That is a neighborhood issue. Even though we're neighbors, I'm you, you're me. I care about your circumstances, I want you to care about mine. I'm not making this a personal issue. This is a neighborhood issue. And if we need to, let's benchmark it. Let's poll the neighborhoods. Let them come and speak, and we'll do the same thing that we did in 2008. That chamber was packed with people that were opposing the lights, not the expansion of the program. You haven't heard anything about the installation of the security equipment, the parking lot expansion program, which is going on as we speak. No one's complained about that. We're just saying, cut off the lights, keep the integrity of the neighborhood as it is, serene at nighttime, let Mother Nature be the time clock when to tell everybody to go home.
Thank you. And Ms. English, I would tell you that you have told me things tonight that I haven't heard.
I understand.
Especially about the money arrangement.
Mr. Block has been...
It hasn't come to us.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And I don't want to get into a discussion, that's what we're supposed to do on the communications. But I live there, and there's not one of my neighbors, and I live all on both sides of Monterey, that their kids go over there and play, and the lights that they put up today, you don't even get any glow. I can see Southfield football lights from my window upstairs. So, but I enjoy it. I'm glad they're playing football over at Southfield. I'm glad that I go to their games. I've been there since 1960. I enjoy it. I enjoy kids playing ball. So we lost Brother Rice. Brother Rice was going to spend $1.5 million to build a field, or just for baseball season. The rest of the time there's going to be for Southfield children, football, soccer, those kinds of events. So they went to Troy to build a field of dreams, and Troy is now bragging about the field of dreams that Brother Rice built there. So, why is it that other communities can have the bragging rights to have these beautiful facilities, and each time somebody wants to spend $1.5 million in this town to make something, and that was only for 3 months. If everybody paid attention, it was only for 3 months. The rest of the time it was Southfield. I'm not going to get into it.
Okay. I understand there's a delegation from Kensal Street in the audience, and I'm going to ask that Mr. Charette will hear your concerns, or council members will hear your concerns at the end of the meeting. We don't have very much more to go. So I would rather talk to you afterwards, but we will stay and listen. Fair enough? All right, I want to move on to the council portion of the agenda, and Ms. Jordan?
Yes, I have a couple of things. First of all, our secretary that has handled our council business for many years, Terry Collins, will be retiring, and I just want to give a shout out to her, congratulate her on her retirement. The other issue is, I've noticed, and it's been happening over the last few years, because of the emerald ash borer destroying many of our trees, what type of replanting are we, and we may have talked about it before, but I guess I need my memory refreshed in terms of just replanting the trees in our community so that we don't lose what we've lost. Mr. Charette, can you help me out, or direct me?
Yes, I can help you out. It is going on, but I've got a report on it, because I don't have all the details, but I know we do have replanting that is going on.
Okay, very good. And then lastly, and I want to be very, very sensitive about this, and this is some of the issues that Toby Rhodes brought up. And there's one issue that he did bring up that is really true, and I can speak for it, because I have a son, and we have to, as black individuals, talk to our children driving while black. Now, none of you all would probably, driving while black. If you're a black male, you have to be really careful with the police, making sure that you're not pulled over for any reason. Now, if you're disobeying the law, if you're speeding, if you've got traffic violations, you should be ticketed. But I just want to make sure that we do have some cultural sensitivity in our city. And I'd like the police chief to talk to us, just to hear from him to make sure that the police officers are not subjecting our people in this city to this matter. And I really like
through the chair, we would be happy to report on all the training that our police officers undergo, to be fair to all parties. And we do have a sophisticated training program, and our results over the years have been excellent as measured by any kind of either complaints or official legal actions against the city of Southfield. We are exemplary. Our methodologies of training are held up throughout the state, and in some instances throughout the country. So we'd be glad to report on that.
Okay, I really would like for that to come back to us. Thank you.
Before we have further council comment, I would like to go through the expense reports, if we may. Get this business taken care of first. So I need a motion for the expense report.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move Mr. Frazier's, I think it's 3 expense reports.
Jeremy wants to start.
Oh, I'm sorry, I move that Jeremy Moss for his travel to Lansing.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Percassi, supported by Mr. Frazier, to approve the expense report for Jeremy Moss attendance at the State of the State address. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Let the record reflect that I abstain.
Okay.
I move that Mr. Frazier's expenses be approved. One was to Washington, D.C., and the other was to Lansing.
Support.
Been moved by Mr. Percassi, supported by Mr. Frazier Mr. Moss to approve the expense report of Mr. Frazier to the Capital City Conference as well as the National League of Cities Conference. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, I will move the approval of the expense reports for Donald Percassi for the Detroit Economic Club and for the MML Capital Conference.
Support.
Been moved by Mr. Moss, supported by Mr. Frazier, for Mr. Percassi's expense reports to attend the Detroit Economic Club as well as the Capital Conference in Lansing. All those in favor?
Aye.
The records indicate that I abstained from that vote.
Motion carries, and we have an abstention. All right, Mr. Moss, you're next.
Yeah, you get kind of a little bit depressed after listening to some of the communications time and time again here at the City Council meetings. I just wanted to briefly touch on 2 things that were brought up during the communications portion, and then talk about something else. It was talked about how in the way that we enforce our codes in the city to keep a standard of beauty of the city's landscaping and stabilization of neighborhoods to make sure that it's kept up properly, that we persecute against residents here in the city of Southfield. And I looked up that definition because it rubbed me the wrong way. The definition of persecute is to subject someone to hostility and ill treatment, especially because of their race or political or religious beliefs. And in a night where we have proclaimed April 24th a day of remembrance for the greater Detroit Armenian community, especially in recognition of the Armenian genocide, words like that trivialize actual persecution. And it was mentioned that our city council are weak Nazis. That it's inappropriate, it's bombastic use of those terms that I think need to be tempered a little bit and put in perspective for what we do here in the city. And then again, it was an attack on Southfield's reputation as a safe community by claiming that this city council disrespects our police department. About 2 months ago, I talked about all the things that we do as a tonight reviewed the police department budget and made some fixes so that they could move forward with adding a K-9 unit, 3 laser radar units, forensic investigative equipment for computer crimes, media equipment for detective bureau interview rooms, and a surveillance video. And, there's a lot of 4-3 votes on council. There's a lot of 6-1 votes on council. So we don't agree with each other on everything. But these are things that we unanimously and continually support. This council, this mayor, and our city administrator continually strive to make Southfield a safe city with a supported police department. So, time and time again on this council, I'm reminded of a quote from one of my personal political heroes, Hubert Humphrey. And I know Mr. Shred and I talked about our affinity for the Happy Warrior. And this quote just keeps going in the back of my head after every meeting. And it's, the right to be heard doesn't automatically include the right to be taken seriously. And when these assertions against this council are repeated time and time again, it's almost like white noise at a point. So I don't want to limit public speech at this council. I've been a proponent of keeping the time frame as is, but it's your choice on what you want to bring before this council, and we'll respond accordingly. But make good use of that 5 minutes, because it's just becoming words now. It's just becoming almost nothing that I can actually listen to and comprehend anymore. What's that?
Like children and grown teachers.
Yeah, exactly. So, moving forward, to cure my depression, I guess, I'll talk about something exciting that the city has moving forward that kind of flew under the radar during the consent agenda, and that's that the Jazz Fest is back. That was one of my favorite events here in the city of Southfield. That was kind of lost when it moved to Detroit, and then the station folded. So now that the station has been reactivated, this is, for me personally, I'm incredibly excited that we are moving forward with WJZZ in bringing back the Jazz Festival to Southfield. And during the committee of the whole meeting that preceded tonight's meeting, the promoters of this event were just talking about great positive things about the city of Southfield, not necessarily things that the city council is responsible for, so I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I'm trying to pat this community on the back as a whole, that we are a city that is a desirable location to have these types of public events to celebrate, in this case, to celebrate music. In certain cases, other events come here to Southfield to celebrate culture, and we should wear that with a badge of honor. First and foremost, that we're recognized as a central location to bring great cultural and exciting events to. But in specific to this, I'm definitely buying my tickets to go to the Jazz Fest. It's going to be tentatively August 9th and 10th. And it's just a celebration of good fun, good summer fun here in the city. We lost the fireworks. We did lose the Jazz Fest, but the fact that this is coming back, it just shows that we are a desired location to live. We're a desired location to be within. And that's why, I continually tell all my friends what a great city this is. I'm going to encourage them to come out August 9th and 10th. And I'm sure I'll see some of my colleagues there and some of the residents who are watching this council meeting.
Okay, other council members?
Yes, I'd like to comment on the item that Ms. Jordan brought up, and the response that came from the city administrator. And she asked that the police chief come and talk with us, and city administrator said that he'd come and talk about the training. I think there's something that may be more, for me, would be more appropriate than him coming in and talking about the training. It would be to bring in an analysis of the tickets that have been written, and the race of the people that were, tickets were written for, because that is something you can't change. I mean, it's already happened. You can train anybody to do whatever you want. It's how they carry out the training that makes the difference. So I think, to me, the proof of the pudding would be to evaluate the kind of tickets that are being written to find out, is there a disparate treatment? And one of the reasons that I bring that up is Americans at their doctor's office. And there's overt treatment and there's covert treatment. That, there's unconscious treatment that the doctors themselves don't even realize that they're treating two different patients, different based on their race. And it's a real eye-opener for me. But you find this thing out by evaluating the actions that have taken place, that have already taken place, not what you intend to have happen by doing the training. The second thing I'd like to bring up is during communication, we were supposedly chastised by having all these wild trips that we take for free, and what do we bring back, let me just say that I'm on a committee at the National League of Cities. It's called the FAIR Committee, Finance, Administration, Intergovernmental Relations, and I have brought back numerous things. The most recent one that I brought back was Bank On, which is, I think it's a real important subject for us to talk about. And Bank On ties in very directly with the check cashing places that are springing up all over the place. There are a large number of people that don't have bank accounts or have very small bank accounts. They don't trust banks or whatever, and as a consequence, they take their checks to a place that cashes their check, but takes a percentage of the check. Either that, or they get check loans, and as a consequence, they end up paying 3, 4, 5, or 10 times as much back in interest as the money that they get. And Bank On is a way of involving banks to work with people that have no checking accounts or very small checking accounts, and showing them how to work within the system and not have to go to the check cashing places to get money to live on a day-to-day week. Just last week or so, I was in Lansing at the Michigan Municipal League Legislative Conference, and I brought our attorney back, stack full of material that the attorneys were discussing in Lansing that has application to all communities, and I presume that there was some information in that stack that could be applied to the city of Southfield. So I take exception to the fact that people come to the microphone and make these wild accusations, and I'm going to quote our city administrator. Everybody has the right to an opinion. There's only one set of facts. And unfortunately, people that come to the microphone don't always have the facts, but they do have an opinion. And the last thing I'd like to say is, as far as the check cashing locations in the community are concerned, we've got that on moratorium right now. No, we don't have it on moratorium, but we have some rules. Okay. At the corner of Bird Road and 10 Mile Road, there's a small place that has big sign up there, check cashing. I called Jeff Spence, and I said, now, was this under the rules or not? And he called me back and he said that as long as it's less than 10% of the floor space, that it's okay. Now, 10% of the floor space. If I opened a business and I really wanted to cash checks, I could make sure that the area that I was going to set aside for cashing checks was less than 10% of the floor space. So I'm not really sure how effective our ordinance is going to be if somebody wants to play games with us and reduce the floor space down to something less than 10%.
Through the chair, if I could just respond.
Sure. Please do.
That was an amendment made by the city council during the process to address larger supermarkets, to allow them to have check cashing as less than a 10%. threshold. We have been to this business several times to make sure that they're a legitimate retail operation and it's not just a guise for check cashing. Now, maybe we need to revisit the ordinance, but that was a specific amendment that was suggested by the council as it went through the process.
Okay.
It seemed to make sense at the time.
Yeah, the bottom line is, what we're trying to do is we're trying to help our residents that fall into this category of having to get check loans or cash or checks at these places that charge them usury in order to cash your checks. So I think we need to make sure that it's doing what we want it to do rather than what we think it's going to do, and they can work around it.
I agree, and as I said, anytime we put something new in practice, we need to revisit it after a year to see, or some reasonable time period to see if it's working.
Okay.
The other thing I would say is that the signage is disproportionate with the amount of business. So, unfortunately, you've got a sign, and 25% of the sign is just check cashing.
Yes.
Whereas the percentage of the business, whether it's square footage or the monetary intake of that, meets our guidelines. And so that there's a little bit disconnect from the signage versus the actual operation.
Okay.
And all I can say is we have had people go in there, quote unquote, undercover just to verify that it's a legitimate business. And as that small business owner has operated further and further, more and more merchandise and retail has come into that business.
Okay.
So I think that's a fair statement. We are aware of it. We're keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
And there might be some revisions or tweaks to the ordinance. But
I
think the intent was there.
Yeah, I just wanted to do what we intended to do rather than let somebody skirt around it.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. That's it.
Mr. President,
I have an item that I'd like to tell the people and the council. I'm thinking twice whether I should say this, and I decided I am going to tell the people what is happening out there. I was invited to a breakfast dinner this past Saturday for the black judges of Oakland County and Wayne County. And Myron was there too, Marvin Fraser. I was there, Vince Gregory. But I didn't speak to the judges, to the whole group. I spoke to about a half a dozen judges from Oakland. It seems that Oakland County has a jail for women who are caught drinking, and if they're caught the second time or the third time, they go to jail. So I said to the judges, why do you incarcerate them instead of sending them to a safe house? There are many safe houses in Detroit and in Southfield and Pontiac, and that's a 3-month tenure, but they send the women who drink 5 months and 6 months in jail. And do you know what happens to those women? They have to pay for everything, for their toothpaste, their toothbrush, their everything. And they're caged up like tigers and cats. Instead of helping these women, they are incarcerated. They don't help them. They don't give them therapy, nothing. And of course they cause hatred. And now I'm going to tell you the idea of why I did this. 90% of the incarcerated drunken women are black. So I said this to the judges, and all the judges there were black. And he said, well, it's a mandatory law that we incarcerate them. So I said, no, you have discretion whether to incarcerate them, to send them to a safe house, to send them to the hospital, or send them to any organization that helps these women. So he didn't answer me. None of them answered me. And Marvin didn't know I was talking to them. I didn't want to talk publicly to them, but I decided now to tell them. Hello? I don't want to shut myself off. In any event, the judges told me that it's not their fault, it's the Senate and the House. The people in the Senate, like Vince Gregory and the rest of them, they have the power to change the law, not to incarcerate the women and not to give them 6 months, but to send them to safe houses. And I wish the council would make a resolution or a proclamation to the judges to get them to do something, to go to the Senate House.
We could refer it to
So,
the next.
I was just about to say, we can take that up in the legislative committee.
okay, that's what I experienced Saturday morning. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from council that wishes to speak? I have just, I'll be very brief, 3 quick things. A couple of weeks back, I had the pleasure of attending the grand reopening of Candlewood Suites in Southfield. This is one of our short-term stay hotels for, particularly for corporate people who are on assignment in the city. And I have to tell you, it's always very good to see a national corporation come in to our city and then maintain the property. And they have spent, it's a multi-million-dollar upgrade on this hotel. And I just want to give kudos to them that they care enough about their property here and our community that they would make this investment, reinvestment in the Candlewood Suites Hotel, which is on Corporate Drive in the vicinity of 11 Mile and Northwestern Highway. Secondly, I want to advise the council and anyone who's listening is that we do have a subcommittee on the Baseline project, celebrating or commemorating the significance of 8 Mile Road, and Councilman Perkowski, Moss, and myself serve on that committee, and we are planning a fundraising breakfast for May 9th. The invitations will go out shortly, and you will be receiving the packet this week. And finally, and I know Ms. Banks will be talking about an event that her office is holding this Saturday. But Saturday is also Southfield Volunteer Day. Anyone who wants to come and work on park cleanup at Inglenook Park or Bedford Woods Park or the campus of Vandenberg School should turn out to Vandenberg School on Saturday morning at 8 a.m. All are welcome, and it's a work day. Come dressed for the weather and work. That's all I have. If nothing else, and we'll move to the mayor's portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a couple things to just make the community aware of. First of all, we have a new police chief, a new fire chief, and a new director of Homeland Security Emergency Services. So, as you know, since I've been mayor, I've been hosting roundtables, and we will have a roundtable on public safety, which this is timely as we're talking. And all our chiefs will be there, the 2 chiefs, Chief Hawkins and Chief Riley, and also Director Bill Johns will be there. And the purpose of this is a roundtable, as all of them, is to allow the community to come in and discuss issues, to be informed. One of the things we talked about is sometimes there's opinions and then there are the facts of what's going on. And I will tell you how powerful it is for the community to come and have real honest dialogue. I was doing a career day at a middle school here in Southfield, and so as the children and I were talking, a young lady, she was 12 years old, said, "Can you text 911? I said, I don't know. She said, because, just think about it. And she referenced a situation where a child was a hostage in a place and said she had to talk in the phone. You should be able to text 911. I was like, wow. And all the kids started chiming in on this discussion. I went back to the chief. I said, can we text 911? And within a few months, there's some new technology that's going to be introduced that will allow you to text 911. So it is important that we engage, and I just want to piggyback on, while this roundtable, and I invite you to come, the whole community, you're invited, and it will be at the library on Wednesday this week, Wednesday, April 24th at 7 p.m. If you're a resident of Southfield, you're invited to come and learn to share your concerns and to just be an active part of the dialogue. I feel strongly that community input is important to a great city. But with that being said, one of the objectives that we have, we have certain rights, and that is those who we elect, we have the right to come and address the body. And I feel very strongly about that. But also want the residents to be informed so that they can actually ask the questions. And if you hear, there are times when the council or administration will say, I don't have the answer, we need to get back to you. And I respect that, because you could just try to respond to everything, but we are professional, we have ethical responsibilities to get you the right information. So I applaud the residents that come out, and we call them council watchers. And there's a place for council watchers or government watchers that actually watch what's going on in government, because government should not go to sleep on the job. But we have to be engaged in factual and truthful information. And I want to say this about our police force. Our police force in Southfield is one that I'm extremely proud of. I trust the outcomes that I've seen from this police force and a diverse community has been one that I have been proud to say I'm the mayor of this city. But with that being said, every city in this country, and I'm on an executive board of mayors all over the country, every mayor in this country is having a discussion about how we are struggling financially and the impact it's had on contracts and benefits that we've had for our employees, which includes our fire and police. And I can tell you, we have sat at the table and labored hard. And I will tell you, anyone that has ever been in labor negotiation knows when you walk away from the table and no one's happy, that's a good contract. No one should be walking away happy. And I tell you, the result of this last contract, there were some wins, there were some losses, there were some collaborations, there were gives and takes. And I'm proud of the contract, but we're moving forward, and we are so vested in our police department. But you can't pay what you don't have. The reality, there is less money, and we are no different from anyone else. And they always ask me, Mayor, how is the city? And today I said, you know what, we were on life support for a while. But you know what, I think we're breathing on our own right now. We are starting, we haven't got out of the hospital yet, but we're breathing on our own. We are moving forward, and we have been able to sustain ourselves and basically stay alive. And that, some communities can't say that, and you see them in the news all the time. So, we have to keep an eye on the prize, work hard, but we're still a great city. The other two events I wanted to talk about was this Saturday. Saturday's a big day. But Rebuilding Oakland Together will be kicking off again. Every year they come to the city of Southfield. They will be repairing 9 homes in the city of Southfield. It's Saturday, April 27th, and it'll be at 8 o'clock at the Eden Corporation. And if you're a carpenter or you have skills, you have a couple opportunities on Saturdays. You can go and get a rake and a bag and join us as we clean up our parks. Or you can get your hammer and your nail and your saw, and you can join us in Rebuilding Together Oakland. And the phone number to volunteer for that is 248-932-1485. And next year I'm going to advertise this early if homes in the community, because you have to meet certain criteria to qualify to be a candidate for the repair, so that we can make sure the community knows about it. But there's a very defined recommendation. But 9 families are going to have crews show up and repair their homes and handicap accessibility and all that. This Friday, April 26th, is Arbor Day. And I'm excited. I've attended these at the schools. They are phenomenal. They go to the concern that Councilwoman Jordan had. Every Arbor Day, we partner with the schools to plant trees, and the kids, they shovel the snow, they put water on it, they all have different tasks, and they take pride in that tree because they're planting it at their school. They get to watch it grow. But it will be this time, it's going to be this Friday, 1 o'clock in Vandenberg, and they will, in honor of Arbor Day, they will be planting a tree. So we're very excited about that. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Moss said. I was at a neighborhood association meeting, and I told them that we haven't finalized yet, but we're negotiating to bring back the jazz. There was a cheer, and a little, yay! Our residents love that jazz stuff. They're proud of it. They love to attend it. So this is going to be a real shot in arm of the community and our sense of pride on what's happening. I do have one concern, and again, that concern, I've been hearing it, I'm living through it myself, and I got a phone call today to refocus it. In my yard, I have a herd of deer. And I'm not in a wooded area. I am in a subdivision that's cookie cutter, house to house. The deer, they lie in my yard and sunbathe, they eat up all the vegetation. They'll come walk on the porch and look at my picture window. The deer population of Southfield is growing, and they are intruding now into non-wooded areas, and they are, as deers do, they multiply. Now, I'm not advocating with warren deer where you can take the arrows and kill them, but we need to pay attention. And the resident called me today, said it's a safety issue for people driving. Because when you're driving down a regular subdivision, you don't expect a deer to run out. It is an issue, like with the kids and other things. And she said, I'm in a subdivision, and it's not one deer. Because like if one comes across the street, then it may be 3 or 4 coming after them. And some kind of way, how do we thin the herds? What do? We haven't had any major destruction of the green space lately. We haven't been building, but the herds are getting bigger. I know what times they tried putting birth control in the pigeons' food. They did that to thin out the pigeon population. I don't know what we need to do, but when they become so comfortable in our neighborhood and their size, because to come home and see a deer standing on your porch looking in your picture window is a little intimidating. So to the council and to the administration, I would like a report on what can we do in our communities to deal with the deer population.
I believe this is a matter for the DNR, but we'll refer that to the administration. All right, I'm going to move on to the city administrator. Do you have anything to report?
Thank you. I do have a comment. It's quite an opportunity to follow the mayor. Your speech on the police department, you said it all. And I just want to say that following up on concerns of councilpersons Jordan and Frazier, we will apply the metrics to the analysis, and we will make sure that we adhere to our vision of fair play and walk the walk. And so we also, I now have the opportunity to learn a lot more about deer than I have heard. It's an interesting subject. We'll learn a lot, and there's got to be some sort of improvement in situation, because it is a problem. But I appreciate the comments, and I would just like to add, to bring Ms. Gerald up to date, that the 2 cadets are now police officers. And the reason that they're police officers is because of the part of the contract that provided what we needed to have happen in order to be able to bring them on the force.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
with that, that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Ms. Seymour?
Thank you, Mr. Simon. I want to comment a little bit on the deer situation. The reason the deer are exploding in this area is because the farther north that we keep pushing development, that's what has brought them into communities like ours. We may not be cutting down our woods, but they're moving development north, which is forcing them down here. And at one time, the Department of Natural Resources did control the deer population, but because the hunting is so popular, they want the herds to increase because it means more hunting. But they don't. No, I know that, but that's what they do. That's what they have done for years. So it has the development in wooded places to the north of us have pushed the deer south, and it has become a problem. But it's a man-made problem. When you take away the wolves and the natural predators, all of this creates this kind of an impact. I don't like the fact that I will tell you, I saw a young deer running across Shamos School's property one morning. I thought it was a dog at first, and it was a deer just romping. That could have easily run across the street in traffic, and you get a deer, it's like hitting. It's a major thing. So I don't know how we control it. It's a problem that the DNR has created.
Okay, next we're going to move to the attorney. Anything tonight?
Nothing tonight, Mr. President.
Okay, then we're going to move to the clerk. I know you have a thing or two.
Yes, thank you. It looks like we're going to have a very busy day this coming Saturday in Southfield. But we are pleased to announce that we will be hosting our 12th annual Shred Day. It will be held Saturday from 10 to 2 at the Southfield High parking lot. And if you have never participated before, if you have any bills or old tax records that needs to be shredded, you can come and actually place it in the bin and watch the truck shred the documents. You are allowed to bring 2 Xerox box sizes full of paper. Anything after that, there will be a small charge. So again, the time is from 10 until 2, and this is the 12th year that we're doing it, and we are partnering with Southfield Public Schools, Iron Mountain, and the City of Southfield. And if anyone has any questions on this, they can contact the City Clerk's office at 248-796-5150.
I thought it was $100.
Well, 2 Xerox boxes full of paper usually is approximately 100 pounds. We don't actually weigh it.
But everybody doesn't have Xerox boxes, So if it's 100 pounds, up to 100 pounds.
Up to 100 pounds, and then after that, we ask for a small donation. And then the next item before you is a change in the time for our May 6th council meeting date to 5 o'clock p.m.
I move that we change the date of our May 6th council meeting to 5 o'clock beginning.
Support.
Been moved by Mr. Fraser, support by Mr. Moss. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We'll be starting at 5 instead of 6 on May 6th.
Thank you.
We have nothing under schedule. Ordinances, we have an enact.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I'm very sorry, Mr. Planner.
I just remind the council that we need to act on public hearing C. I did leave several messages for the applicant, was unable to get a hold of him. I did confirm with Mr. Spence that he did remind him of this date. I would your next regular meeting is May 20th, if I'm correct. Public hearing was already held, so it just would be, the decision would be postponed to May 20th.
Mr. President, I move to postpone the public hearing on GP 1252 to May 20th.
It's been supported by Ms. Jordan. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, and then finally, we have an act as an ordinance. Mr. Frazier.
Can we get that corrected? You mean June, you said May?
Did I say May?
Yes, you did. Do you want it?
No, it's May 20th.
May 20th.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
May 20th, for that postponement. The others are June 17th. Okay.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
I move that we enact ordinance number 1606, the definitions of garage.
All those, support?
Support.
Supported by Ms. Jordan. Any discussion? We've discussed it several times. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. If there's no other business,